The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and assalamu alaikum, everyone. I hope all of you can hear me. Okay, hello and assalamu alaikum, everyone. I am Kashif Kamran and I welcome you all to the Advanced Audit and Assurance Practice to Pass webinar for March 2021 exams being organized by ACCA Pakistan. First of all, before I start the proceeding for this webinar, I would like to introduce myself and the overall agenda of this Practice to Pass webinar. Now, in terms of my tutor profile, I am Kashif Kamran, and in terms of my teaching experience, it's been over 14 years since I am teaching the ACCA qualification, and my specializations are in both the AA paper and the AAA paper alongside the SVL paper. I am currently in association with PAC, which is a gold approved learning provider of ACCA Pakistan in Lahore, Pakistan, and the Tabani School of Accountancy, which is a platinum approved learning provider for ACCA Pakistan in Karachi, Pakistan. I am also a registered mentor for Oxford Brookes University Research Project, and this March 2020 webinar is my 11th AAA Practice to Pass session, which I am conducting with ACCA Pakistan. Now, with that tutor profile, I would formally like to start the proceedings of this Practice to Pass webinar for March 2021. Now, you can reach me or you can follow me on my social media presence. You can see my YouTube channel, you can see my Facebook page, you can see my email ID on the screen, and you can see my WhatsApp number. Now, during the course of the webinar, you will get access to the students WhatsApp group, which you can join, where you can get lots and lots of resources over the next 5 days. Okay, down to the webinar, the AAA P2P for March 2021. Let's explore the AAA pass rates, let's explore the paper format, and more importantly, the examiner comments before we start with the agenda for the first day of this AAA webinar. I hope all of you must have registered yourself for the upcoming exams in March 2021. And I also hope that you're progressing well towards your preparation for the Advanced Audit and Assurance paper. And this particular webinar will be a confidence booster for all of you, as this webinar will provide you the right set of techniques you will be needing to pass the upcoming AAA exams. So let's start on with the analysis of the AAA paper. Now, the objective of this Practice to Pass session is to provide you the right direction to pass the AAA exam, a direction which is closer to examiner mindset. A lot of time when the students are preparing for the AAA exam, whether they are preparing it for the first time or they are repeating the AAA exam, they are least bothered about reading the mindset of the examiner, and they tend to be far away from the examiner. So if you want to pass the AAA paper, you need to ensure that you are closer to the examiner mindset, because that will enable you to be successful in the very first exam setting. And I'll be guiding you throughout the next 5 days as to how you can be closer to the examiner mindset. These sessions over the next 5 days will be a mind opener for all of you, as they provide you the right tips and techniques so to control the AAA paper in the right manner. So I hope you will all be ready, set for the next 5 days to be part of this webinar and participating in the live webinar, so it can really be a mind opener for all of you as you prepare for your March 2021 exams. This Practice to Pass webinar will also mitigate your misconceptions and myths you have around the AAA paper. So let's start the journey to give you the right direction. I believe the students have lots of misconceptions around the AAA paper. They have lots of misconceptions around the core topics of the AAA paper, and those misconceptions really creates an obstacle or really creates a barrier towards success in the AAA paper. So I also need to address those misconceptions over the next 5 days. So this is the objective of this practice to pass webinar. The pass rates. Now, if you look at the pass rates of the recent 5 exam sittings, on average, the AAA passing rates move around 30 to 33%. We don't see any unusual elements in the pass rate. Yes, in the September uh, 19 session, the passing rate was like 36%, which was a bit high, but you can see the passing rates down to 30, 33, 33. Yes, in the last exam sitting, even the passing rate was uplifted to like 35%, which was very good. Now, I think this should give you confidence that the passing rates are not that bad for AAA. There used to be sessions for AAA when the passing rate used to be just 30 or 31. But I think over the past few exam settings, at least it has improved, and it has improved into the bracket of 33 to 36, which is very good, because it used to be in the bracket of 30 to 33. So I think that increment of 3% over the last few exam settings is a very healthy sign, and is a very optimistic sign that things are improving in terms of the AAA, provided you have the right set of techniques to pass the AAA paper. So if you want to be among that passing threshold, you need to find the right techniques over the next 5 days, which you should apply on the day of your exams to be successful. So as like the other strategic optional papers, the passing rates for AAA are ideally placed into that bracket of 30s. Now, moving away from the passing rates of the AAA paper and finding solutions to pass and finding the way to pass the AAA paper over the next 5 days, the syllabus of the AAA versus the paper format. Now, as a student, if you're preparing for AAA, you should have the control over the syllabus. And the control over the syllabus is very important. And simultaneously, you should also know the paper format. If you have a sync between the syllabus and the AAA paper, that will be wonderful for all of you. Just 1 minute, right? Okay, just to confirm me that all of you can hear me, right? Or a majority of you can hear me, because if there is an issue with 1 and 2 students, then that particular student needs to exit out of the webinar and then join again. Okay, thank you very much on the clarity of the voice. Okay, let's proceed down. Okay, now when you look at the syllabus versus the AAA paper, you should have a control on the syllabus. You should know what is the AAA syllabus, because that's extremely important. Now when you look at the AAA syllabus, the section A of your exam paper, which is a 50 marks question, uh, it comes from the syllabus area D, which is planning and audit of historical financial statements. So the syllabus area D, right, planning and the audit of the historical financial statement contributes significantly to the section A of the paper. So if you are attempting the question number 1 of the AAA paper, which is the section A, you should have a very good command on the syllabus area D, because section A is set at the stage of planning. Now, when you look at the section B of the paper, right? The section B of the paper, which consists of a question number 2 and the question number 3, the section B comes from a syllabus area E and a syllabus area F. Now, one of the question in section B will definitely be from syllabus area E. So out of the two questions you have in section B, question 2 and question 3, one of them will definitely be from the syllabus area E, right? Now, just again, proceeding further, my voice is clear to all of you, right? I might be asking this in the initial few minutes just to be on the safe side. Okay, thank you very much. Okay, so we were discussing that the syllabus area E, right, will be part of the section B, and you will definitely find one question from syllabus area E, either in the question number 2 or in the question number 3. Now, I think from September 18 exams, when the paper format was changed, right up to the March 2020 exams, examiner used to ask the syllabus area E in the question number 2. Now, this was up to the March 2020 exams, right? Now, in the last two exam sittings, which were September 2020 exams and which were the December 2020 exams, from September 2020 exams and then the December 2020 exams, the two recent papers, we have seen that the examiner has started to test the syllabus area E, this one, now in the question number 3. Is that clear to all of you? So up to the March 2020 exams, the examiner was putting the syllabus area E in the question number 2. Now, since the last two exam sittings, the September 20 and the December 20, the examiner has shifted the syllabus area E, which is a question on audit reporting, in the question number 3. Is that clear to all of you? If you can reply to that. Okay, that's great. Okay, now that means now since the December 20 exams or since the September 20 exams, the question number 2 has now become an open question, right? Because the examiner has shifted the syllabus area E to the question number 3 now. Now that means the question number 2 is an open question. Now in the question number 2, you can find the other assignments. Before we used to find the other assignments in question number 3. Now that will be the vice versa. In the future exam settings like the March 2021 exams, you might find the question number 2 on other assignments, right? So this time when you enter the exam hall, you will find that the question number 3 will be a reporting question, right? And the question number 2 will be an open question. And in the question number 2, you might find other assignments because you usually used to find other assignments in question number 3. Is that clear with everyone? The shift the examiner has taken, right? Okay, that's great. Now, you should know the section A and you should know the section B, and you should know that the question number 1 is set at the planning stage. The question number 3 is set at the stage of completion and reporting. And the question number 2 is an open question where examiner can test the other assignments, which is the syllabus area F. Right? Now, when you look at the other parts of the syllabus after D, E, and F, what are other parts of syllabus? The other parts of the syllabus are the syllabus area A, B, and C. Now, when you look at the syllabus area A, B, and C, the A is the regulatory environment, the B is the ethical and professional matters, and C is the quality control and practice management. See what I have written on the top of ABC. They can be tested anywhere in the paper. So you can find A, B, C in the question number 1. You might find them in the question number 2, or you might find them in question number 3, or they might be present in 2 out of 3 questions. So the syllabus area A, B, C is an open question, right? Is an open areas of the syllabus. They can come in any question. I hope that's clear to all of you. Syllabus area D is confined to section A. Syllabus area E and F is confined to section B. I hope you're all clear on that. And the syllabus area A, B, and C is all open. They can come anywhere in the paper. We have seen ethical and professional matters in the question number 1. We have even seen ethical and professional matters in question number 2 and even in 3. The regulatory environment has come even in question 1, at times in question number 3. So you should be prepared for syllabus area A, B, C, which can come anywhere, right? The last thing, current issues. The syllabus area G, current issues. A lot of time, the student have misconceptions around current issues. And already there are questions on current issues coming in this webinar as well. you need to understand that the syllabus area G is very clear. See what I have written under the syllabus area G. Only when an examining team writes an article. So if an examining team writes an article on current issue in prior to the March exams. Now, prior to the March exams, we are already in the first week of February. So in the next 6 to 7 days, if any new article comes in, that will become important for your March exams. But over the next 7 to 10 days, if no new article comes in, then you will be very safe that there is no current issue for your March 2021 exams. Is that clear to all of you? Can you respond to that quickly? Right? So current issues will only come in exam paper when you have an examiner article. So in the next 6 to 7 days, if there is any article, I'll update you. But currently there is no article on current issues. So I think we are very safe that there will be no current issues for March 2021 exams, but we need to monitor the next 5 to 6 days very carefully. Over the next 5 to 6 days, if any new articles pop in, I'll update you, right? The data analytics article was tested in the December 2020 exams, I think for 5 to 6 marks. So we don't see any further testing of the article immediately in the March 2021 exams, because data analytics was examined for like 5 to 6 marks in the December 2020 exams, right? And the article on the group audit is not a current issue article, right? The current issue article has to be from a syllabus area G, right? The group audit is not a syllabus area G. The group audit is a syllabus area D, right? So please don't get confused that a group audit is a current issue. The group audit belongs to a syllabus area D of the paper, right? Not the syllabus area G. Whenever an examiner writes a current issue article, he will mention in the article from the syllabus area G. So that's how you pick up, oh, this is a current issue. So is everyone clear with the syllabus A, B, C, D, E, F, G? And is everyone clear how the syllabus will come into the section A and section B? And when and how the current issues will be examined, right? So you should have a holistic view of the syllabus, and you should have a holistic view of the AAA paper, which is very, very important, whether you are appearing for the first exam sitting of the AAA or you are repeating the AAA paper. You should exactly know how the syllabus links with the AAA paper to be better prepared. Okay, now moving onwards from the syllabus versus the AAA paper, the paper format. The Advanced Audit and Assurance AAA examination comprise of two sections. You all know that, right? Section A contains a 50 marks question set predominantly at the planning stage, while the section B has two 25 marks question, one of which will be predominantly set in the completion and reporting stage of the audit. I hope that paragraph is loud and clear to all of you. So in one of the section B question will be predominantly set at the stage of completion and reporting, which is basically the syllabus area E, right? And the remaining question can be taken from anywhere in the syllabus area. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, that's great. So please ensure you know the paper format. You know that the section A comes from the syllabus area D. In the section B, one of the question will be from syllabus area E for sure. And the other question in the section B will be an open question and can come from anywhere in the syllabus, right? So that's exactly what you should be knowing when you're preparing for your upcoming exams. Okay, my previous AAA Practice to Pass webinars, which are very important because this is my 11th webinar I'm doing for ACCA Pakistan. So there are plenty of other webinars which are available, which you can use and which can be really helpful to all of you. You need to reach ACCA Pakistan for previous webinars. They have a channel on Vimeo. When you go to Vimeo, you type ACCA Pakistan, and on the ACCA Pakistan channel on Vimeo, you can watch the previous webinars. You can see the hyperlink, right, of the Vimeo channel. And at this particular hyperlink, you should watch the webinars. Now, how many webinars to watch? At least watch the following ones. So let's see which webinars am I recommending to all of you, which you should all follow. At least watch the December 2020, the March 2020, December 2019, and September 2019. Don't go prior to September 2019, right? They will be too old webinars. So I would prefer that you start from September 2019 and December 2020, right? The 4 webinars, and you're already taking the 5th webinar, right? The 5th webinar is the March 2020 webinar, which you are currently taking. Is that clear to all of you? I think that was a frequently asked question of the students, which webinar to watch prior to the March 2021 exams, right? And I hope you're all clear on that. Okay, that's great. Okay, now moving onwards towards the key feedback and journal comments of the examiner. I'll be showing you the latest examiner report today, which is the September-December 20 examiner report. And I will be showing you that for a reason, that the interface of the examiner report has changed. And the examiner report has become more student friendly. If you have downloaded the recent examiner report for September-December 20 exams, you might be amazed looking at the format of the new examiner report. It has become more student friendly, and I'll be showing you that, right? I'll be showing you that, right? Okay, I hope all of you can see my screen, the journal comments of examiner in front of you. Okay, now let's look at some of the journal comments of the examiner, which came from the very recent examiner report, which is the September-December 20. Candidates should note that the accounting standards listed within the SPR syllabus are examinable in AAA, right? That is very important. So many times I have recommended students to do SPR before the AAA paper. I have no idea why the students do AAA first and SPR after. You should always ensure that your SPR paper is done prior to the AAA exam or with the AAA exam. So you should have a sound accounting knowledge. That is what the examiner is recommending you. Number 2, marks awarded at the AAA level is for the application of the knowledge, to a given scenario where candidates demonstrate an understanding of the issue presented. So candidates needs to demonstrate the understanding of the issue, and they should apply the knowledge. There is no rote learning, right? There is no rote learning. A lot of time I have seen students going after rote learning. See, there is no space for rote learning in AAA. You cannot just spend time on reading the BPP book and the Kaplan book too much, and you expect I go to the exam hall just by reading the BPP and Kaplan book. This will be disastrous for you. You need to spend time on practice. The more, the better. And I'll be guiding you how much practice you should do. So you should be good on the accounting knowledge. You should be good on the application of the knowledge to a given scenario. Candidates should ensure that they're fully conversant with the financial reporting standards covered by the SPR to maximize their ability to effectively identify the audit risk which may arise from these issues and propose an effective procedure to address those risks. I hope so many times all of you must have seen that when you are identifying an audit risk in the question number 1, any student who is good at an accounting treatment can identify the audit risk quickly. Is that true? Is that false? If any student is good at an accounting treatment, he or she will identify the audit risk quickly. I hope you all understand this is a true statement, right? But if you are weak on an accounting knowledge, you will struggle. You will struggle identifying the audit risk. And when you are writing procedures, right, most of the time you see procedures in the question number 1. You must have seen procedures coming on accounting treatments. You must have seen procedures coming on earning per share, procedures coming on the government grant, procedures coming on an acquisition of a subsidiary, procedures coming on a goodwill. So if you are good on an accounting treatment, will that help you propose an effective procedure? So examiner is saying if the students are fully conversant with the financial reporting standards, you are maximizing your opportunity to pass the AAA paper. I hope you're clear on the bullet number 3, right? Okay, a common feature of weaker answer. That's important. A common feature of a weaker answer in this subject is to use of rote learned knowledge without application to a scenario. Use of rote learned knowledge. How many of you do that? Majority of you do that. That is the reason the passing rate is 33-35%. The majority of you go after rote learning. I have seen students who keep spending time in a BPP book and a Kaplan book even a day before exam. The BPP book is giving you knowledge. The application of that will come from the past paper. I hope you understand this. You still have a month before March exams, and you start spending this 1 month on practice. I hope you will make a commitment with me today that this entire 1 month will be spent on practice, and the guidance you will be taking from the day 1 of the webinar today. Right? So a common feature of a weaker answer is to use rote learning without the application. I fail to understand why you go without application. You are a manager in the AAA paper, right? And if you are a manager, why you act like a junior? If you continue to act like a junior in the AAA paper, how will you pass the paper? So will you become a manager in the next 1 month by practicing, and start to understand the rigor of the exam? Start to understand the temperament of the exam? I hope you go away from the rote learning and you come closer to the application. The next feedback of the examiner: candidates should be able to synthesize and evaluate material. Look at this, what the examiner is telling you. Candidates should be able to synthesize and evaluate material. Simply listing knowledge without explaining will not be sufficient. Simply listing knowledge without explaining. How many times the student just identify a point from a case study and they fail to explain the point, they fail to develop the point, they fail to evaluate the point, they fail to synthesize the point in the context of the case. What does explaining means? Explaining in the context of the case study. And I'll be demonstrating that today and over the next 5 days, that how you synthesize, how you evaluate. Because till the time you don't synthesize and you don't evaluate, or you just simply list the knowledge, that's useless. That will not give you 50 marks. I hope you're getting that bullet right. And I'll be demonstrating each of these bullets over the next 5 days through the application. Okay, next. This is particularly important with responses relating to procedures. A lot of time you write procedures, but you don't justify what is the purpose of procedure. A lot of time the student just write a procedure, review the board minutes, but why? Or a lot of times students say recalculate the deferred tax, but why? A lot of time the student says discuss with management, but why? You miss the why. And if you miss the why, you will never score 50 marks. You need to emphasize upon the reasons. You need to emphasize upon the why answer. The why answer is very critical in the AAA paper. So this is particularly important with procedures relating to procedures, important to responses relating to procedures, where the purpose of the procedure must be given. See, the purpose of the procedure must be given. You need to do a self-appraisal, all of you, in the webinar today. If you are repeating AAA paper, do a self-appraisal. Ask yourself a question. How many times you put a purpose of a procedure and how many times you miss it? And after the comma, the examiner says, and ethics, where the name of a threat will not be awarded, rather than identifying the specific way in which the threat arises in a given scenario and the implication to a case study. How many times the student, when they're writing the ethics answer, they are in so hurry that they just identify, okay, this is a self-review threat, full stop. This is a familiarity threat, full stop. No marks till the time you justify why it is a familiarity threat in the context of the case study, or why it is a self-review threat in the context of the case study, or why it is an advocacy threat in the context of a case study, or why it is a management threat in the context of the case study. I hope you're getting this perspective. I hope you are understanding what I am trying to say. So this is examiner comments. These are not my comments, but these are true comments. These are reason of failures. And this is coming from the September-December 20 exams. So will all of you start to explain your point? Will all of you start to evaluate, synthesize? Will all of you start to act like a manager over the next 5 days? I'll try my best to guide you as much as possible in the limitation of the 15 hours. The next thing, appropriate exam techniques should be developed. Appropriate exam techniques should be developed. And that is where this webinar will help you. That is the next 15 hours will help you. Appropriate exam techniques should be developed using question practice, which you will be looking for over the next 5 days for the skill of time management, such an important issue in AAA paper. Time management. I'll be addressing time management every day, starting from today. And I'll be guiding you on techniques where you can have a better time management to the AAA paper, because I believe a lot of time the student fails the AAA paper by missing the paper. I have discussions with so many students over last so many years. They say we failed at 49 and we attempted 85% paper. We failed at 46, we attempted 80% paper. We failed at 49, we attempted 90% paper. So you need to understand the importance of time management. Reading relevant technical articles. I believe if you have watched my previous webinars, I always emphasize on this. I believe articles are better than book. And I think this is my statement, which you all must have heard in my previous webinars as well. I rate articles over the book. I prefer that you need to read articles over the book. And this is what the examiner is telling you now in the September-December 20 examiner report. And exam technique articles. I believe you all know the exam technique articles. I believe you all know there are 5 exam techniques article available over the website of AAA. Have you all seen the 5 exam techniques article, part 1, part 2, part 3, part 4, part 5? Published on the SEC website? That's wonderful. If you've not seen it, please go and see that. And reading the past examiner reports for each sitting. The last bullet is the key for success. And this is my webinar. This is my webinar. The last bullet is my webinar. My webinar is about techniques. My webinar is about time management. My webinar is about reading relevant technical articles. My webinar is about exam technique article. My webinar is about past examiner reports. So for me and for you, the last bullet on the screen is the key. I hope you understand. And I'll be realizing this. I'll be reinforcing this over the next 5 days. So please ensure that you try to find a solution in the next 15 hours to be successful in the upcoming March 2021 exams. Okay, moving onwards. Now moving onwards, it's bringing us closer to the start of the webinar. The agenda. Now the agenda of the webinar has been carefully drafted. Considering it's my 11th webinar with ACCA Pakistan, it's an immense challenge for me to avoid repetition. It's an immense challenge for me not to do something which I've done in the previous webinar and to give you something different, even though it's free of cost and I could do anything in the webinar. But I still want to ensure that the 15 hours you spend in this webinar gives you something. So the agenda of the webinar has been carefully drafted to give you the best for the March 2021 exams, right? And when you watch my 4 previous webinar, this webinar should be different and this webinar should stand out. So let's see what's the agenda for the webinar, which I have carefully thought of in the last 7 days. The agenda of the webinar. The webinar is stretched over 5 days, the day 1 being today, and every day we will have a live session from 8:30 to 11:30 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. The day 1 agenda today is audit risk. The day 2 agenda tomorrow is ethical, professional, and quality control issues. The day 3 agenda on the 4th of Feb will be the audit report. The day 4 agenda on the 5th of Feb is other assignments, forensic and due diligence, 2 of them. And even on the day 5, I will do the other assignments because there are so many other assignments. And on the day 5, I will do the audit of performance information, 1 of them. So I will do 3 other assignments. A review of prospective financial information has come in recent papers, so I'm not bothered about it. and I have done review of prospective financial information even in my previous webinars, which you will be watching. So I just want to focus on 3 of the 4 other assignments we have in the syllabus. And on the 5th day, I will keep a time for knowledge areas, which most of the time student tends to ignore, which is basically the syllabus area A. And a lot of time the student tends to ignore the syllabus area A, right? So this is the agenda. I've kept sufficient time today in this webinar, which is on other assignments, because other assignments is an area which I think I explored in 2019 webinars. So I want to do them in recent scenarios. Just want to see what are recent papers on other assignments, right? So I hope all of you agree with the agenda of the webinar, and you will be happy looking at this agenda. So audit risk today, followed by ethical and professional issues tomorrow. Then day after tomorrow, we have audit report, then other assignments. A lot of time has been spent in this webinar on other assignments just to ensure that you have a good control of the syllabus area F, right? And the knowledge areas. Okay, so that's the agenda. So let's start with the agenda for today, which is audit risk. Okay, now just before I start the audit risk, the main agenda for day one, a confirmation again. I hope all of you can hear me. My voice is clear to all of you. It's audible to all of you, and you can see the screen sharing in front of you. Okay, that's wonderfully good. Okay, so let's start on with the agenda for day one, which is audit risk, such an important syllabus area and such a weak syllabus area when it comes to student. I will be showing you the examiner criticism even, which will be a mind opener for you, how you go bad in terms of audit risk in exam paper. Now, just before I start on with my agenda for audit risk, I just want to give you some suggestions of improving your answer on audit risk as well. But you can watch my previous webinars, which I have done on risk of material misstatement. I hope you all know risk of material misstatement is part and parcel of audit risk. And I've done my webinar on audit risk as well. One was in September 19, I've given the hyperlink. And one was in March 19, I've given the hyperlink, right? So please ensure that you watch the previous webinars on risk of material misstatements and audit risk. They will also be helpful to all of you when you're preparing yourself for a topic known as audit risk. So this is the previous webinars to watch. Okay, now moving onwards. The agenda. On the day one of the webinar, which is audit risk, articles. 3 articles. Exam technique article. Exam technique article part 2, risk assessment. Exam technique article part 3, accounting issues, and planning and audit of financial statement. You should know the stage of audit. A lot of time when you are attempting the question number 1, the question number 1 focuses on the planning stage, right? Because the question number 1 focuses on a planning stage, you should read the article planning and audit of financial statement, so you exactly know what happens at the stage of planning. So how many articles to read with day 1? 3. You have the 3 articles in the resources of the webinar. I hope you can see the resources of the webinar in front of the panel you have on your screen, and you can download these resources, right? And these resources can be provided to you on the WhatsApp group even. I hope you can all see the resources with you, right? So 3 articles to be read with the day 1. The technique article part 2, the technique article part 3, and planning and audit of financial statement. Now, over the day 1, I will be doing the analysis of the examiner do's and don'ts. I'll be looking at the recent examiner reports, as I will do 2 questions today, one from September 18 exams, the question number 1, and one of the very recent exams, December 20, question number 1. So one very recent paper will be incorporated in this webinar as well. And your home assignments, I will prefer that the home assignments will be that you complete the September 18 question number 1 where I leave it. You complete the December 20 question where I leave it, and you should watch the previous recommended webinar. So that's your homework, right? Complete the questions, which I will be doing in the webinar today, and watch the previous recommended webinar, and also read the articles recommended to all of you. Right? So is everyone clear with the agenda? Day 1, audit risk. You can take a screenshot of that as well. And please ensure that you follow the day 1 agenda over the next 24 hours and try to complete the day 1 agenda within the next 24 hours before the day 2 starts in. So that's the agenda which we will be working on in the remaining time of the webinar today. Okay, now just before proceeding towards audit risk and just starting our discussion on audit risk before we attempt a question September 18 and December 20 with the proper marking scheme and with the proper analysis of the examiner do's and don'ts, I just want to discuss something very important with all of you. Now, over the next 5 days, I'll be using this Word file, which you can see right in front of your screen. Can all of you see the Word file in front of your screen? Okay, that's great. Now I'll be using this Word file, and anything which I type on this Word file, I'll save it and I'll share it on the WhatsApp group. So don't be worried about if you miss something out from the Word file. I'm using it as my whiteboard, and everything I write on it, I will be sharing it in a PDF version with all of you after the session ends today, right? If you want to take something from the screen, you can take it down, you can take a screenshot, whatever you want to do, right? But let's first start with the day 1 agenda. Now on the day 1 today, okay, let's start with the day 1 agenda. We know the day 1 agenda is obviously audit risk, and alongside the audit risk, we have the risk of material misstatement, right? So we will be going into audit risk and risk of material misstatements, right? In terms of the day 1. Now, for that, I have a suggestion for all of you. Now, when you're preparing yourself for audit risk and risk of material misstatement, how you should go about excelling in audit risk and ROM. How to excel in audit risk and ROM. Is there a technique which you can use effectively? Let's be on it. So how to excel in an audit risk and ROM. Let's see if I can devise a strategy for you. Okay, now in terms of excelling in an audit risk and ROM, what you should do exactly, listen to me carefully. First of all, clear your concepts. Clear your concept on what is an audit risk, and clear your concept on what is a risk of material misstatement. You should know the difference. You should know the slight difference you have between an audit risk and a ROM. I hope you know the difference between an audit risk model and a ROM model. There is a slight difference between an audit risk model and a ROM model, and that slight difference is the detection risk. In an audit risk model, you have a detection risk, right? Whereas in a ROM model, you don't have it. So the majority of your answer, when you're writing an audit risk answer, majority of the answer is like a ROM answer, with the exception of a detection risk. And when you're writing a ROM answer, obviously it's a ROM answer. I hope you do study the exam technique article part 2, and the exam technique article part 2 is very clear on the concept of what is an audit risk and risk of material misstatement. So to clear your concept, you should read the exam technique article. Read the exam technique article part 2, which is risk. And in the article, the examiner has wonderfully explained what is an audit risk, and the examiner has wonderfully explained what is a ROM. So when you are attempting a question on audit risk and ROM, first of all, you should have a clear concept of it. Now let me show you that quickly. Okay, you can see in front of your screen the exam technique article now, right over here, the exam technique article. And this is the part 2 of the exam technique article right here, which is on risk. And this is a wonderful article which tells you about what is an audit risk and what is a risk of material misstatement, even the business risk as well. Okay, you scroll down the part 2 article on risk, page number 2. On page number 2, the examiner has given you the definitions. Examiner has given you the definitions of what is a business risk, what is a risk of material misstatement, and what is an audit risk. You can read that out. But the important thing is this. I hope you can see here how they interact. See the formula. Audit risk is equal to risk of material misstatement multiplied by detection risk. So is ROM part of audit risk, everyone? Is ROM part of audit risk? Yes. So when you are attempting a question on audit risk, is ROM part of it? It is. Multiply by detection risk. So when you are attempting a question on audit risk, should you identify a detection risk from the case study apart from ROM? But you know majority of the case is on ROM. Is that true? Is that false? Majority of the case is on ROM. There might be just one to a maximum two detection risk, not more than that. Majority of the question is on ROM. There might be just one or max two detection risk in the whole case study. So should you be strong on ROM? If you are strong on ROM, will you be able to attempt a question on audit risk? And if you're strong on ROM, will you be able to attempt a question which comes on ROM only? So should your ROM be stronger? Will a stronger ROM helps you in audit risk and a stronger ROM help you with a separate question on ROM? Right? So please ensure you polish your ROM. Please ensure you polish your ROM, because if your ROM is strong, you can pass the audit risk question, you can pass a ROM question, right? Now just look at the box under the formula. Important. I'm reading the box. Keep your focus on the box. See what the examiner is telling in the box. For a risk of misstatement to occur, there must be an inherent risk of an item being misstated and a risk that the client controls did not identify and correct this misstatement. When you are asked to evaluate ROM in an exam, see this. When you are asked to evaluate ROM in an exam, the examiner is looking for those inherent and controlled risk. And in many cases, these are from the underlying business risk. So business risk means the situation given in the exam paper, right? So when the examiner asks you to evaluate ROM, what is the examiner looking for? The underlying inherent risk in the case study, the underlying control risk in the case study, because the ROM is equal to inherent risk multiplied by control risk. I hope you're all clear on that. Look at the last paragraph. For something to be an audit risk, for something to be an audit risk, for something to be an audit risk, there must be either a ROM or a detection risk. So there must be either a ROM or a detection risk. So in the case study, you need to find a ROM or a detection risk for it to be an audit risk, right? So there is a slight difference between audit risk and ROM. So you just need to focus on detection risk when you're working on an audit risk model. Else your primary focus is on ROM, right? So I hope you're all clear on that. And that is exactly what I have shown in my presentation. Look at this. Audit risk. And audit risk consists of a ROM, and audit risk consists of a detection risk. Is that clear to all of you? Good. And when you look at a ROM consists of inherent risk. Just 1 minute. ROM consists of an inherent risk and ROM consists of a controlled risk. So if a question comes in the exam paper, evaluate ROM. Your focus is on ROM, right? But if a question comes in the exam paper, evaluate audit risk, then what are you focusing on? You're focusing on the ROM as well as the detection risk. Is that clear to all of you? Are you fundamentally clear between the difference between evaluate audit risk and evaluate ROM? Right? Okay, that's great. So please ensure that you read the exam technique article, which gives you a very good concept about what is an audit risk and what is a ROM, and the slight difference between both is a detection risk. And you should exactly know what is a detection risk. Even the examiner has explained detection risk in the article. Okay, now the second phenomena. Once you are clear with the concept on what is an audit risk and what is a ROM, and you read through the article, the exam technique article part 2, risk, what you should do next. The next thing you should do is apply the concept or apply the knowledge you have for audit risk and ROM to past papers. Now that's a big question. Apply the concept you have and the knowledge you have on ROM and audit risk to past papers. How many past papers? Which past papers? Now, when you're applying knowledge to past papers, I would only suggest you that you do the recent papers. You only do the recent papers. I would not suggest you that you do other than recent papers. And what are recent papers? The recent papers are September 18, the question paper is available. December 18, the question paper is available. March, June 19, there is a hybrid paper available for this. Right? And then you have the September, December 19 exams. And then you have the March 20 exam paper published. And then the last paper published is the September, December 20 exam. So how many recent papers are there? 6. You should spend time on these 6 papers. Apply the concept, the knowledge to the past paper. How many? 6. Do 1 paper daily and apply the knowledge. So that's not plenty, but these 6 papers is an ideal preparation for March 2021 exams, because these 6 papers will really give you the rigor you need for the March 2021 exams. Don't do old papers, please. Don't do old papers. 6 papers for audit risk and ROM is excellent. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, so you clear the concept and then you apply. Right? We'll have strategies for question 2s and question 3s in the later days of the webinar. Today we're only focusing on the question number 1 and only on one agenda, which is audit risk and ROM. So I need just to give you a strategy for the topic, how to prepare for audit risk and ROM. First, clear your concept, followed by apply the concepts to the past paper. Now listen to me very carefully, all of you, and I'll be asking you questions. The next, third. Now, when you apply knowledge to the past paper, right, and you start with the past paper, right? You start with the past paper. Question number 1. Suppose you start with the question number 1 of the September 18 exams, right? Suppose you start with September 18 question number 1. Just let's suppose it, and you do it for the rest of them, right? You start with the question number 1, September 18. What will you do? Obviously, you will first read the case, and I'll be showing you how. After reading the case, you will annotate or you will identify issues from the case where you believe there is an audit risk or a risk of material misstatement. You will annotate, identify issues from the case when you are reading the case. Now, after that, you will start to write an answer. Now, when you start to write an answer for audit risk, or you start to write an answer for ROM, that's very important, where I need to be very focused today. When you write an answer, there is a structured approach to write an answer. There is a structured approach to write an answer. And the structured approach has not been developed by me. The structured approach is the examiner approach. When you're writing an answer, there is a structured approach to write an answer. Where is the structured approach? The structured approach is in the exam technique article, part 2, risk. And that structured approach is given by the examiner in the article. Let me show you that. I will be covering that in my webinar today. If you go to the article I was reading the page number 2 with you, right? Now you go down to page number 3, you go down to page number 4, and you go down to page number 5. On the page number 5, you will find the structured approach. This is the structured approach given by the examiner. 1, 2, 3, 4. Please just mark the page number 5. And I'll be covering this structured approach today. Don't be worried about it. But the way to write an answer, examiner is saying these are the steps to follow. These are the steps to follow when you're writing a good answer. An effective way to write an answer. Examiner is telling you this is the way to write an answer. And you don't read it. Page number 5 of the exam technique article. I'll be going through it. I'll be answering it. Okay, so write an answer through a structured approach, which is given in the exam technique article part 2 risk on page number 5. Please take a time out. Every day is important. Every day is precious. Take time out and read it. So write an answer in the way the examiner likes to see your answer, rather than you write an answer in a way that makes you happy, not your examiner. So we'll focus on that. Okay, you write an answer, right, in a structured approach. Good. Next, what will you do? After you write an answer, please ensure that you write an answer in headings. I'll be guiding you on that. Headings followed by paragraphs, And I will be telling you what should be an ideal length of a paragraph, ideal length of a para in my session today. So be focused on that coming over the time duration we have. So you write a structured answer. I will be telling you what is that structured answer as per the examiner wish. You put a heading followed by a paragraph. What's an ideal length of a paragraph? Okay, so you write an answer. Suppose you're sitting at home, you read the case, you annotate the issues, you write an answer. Okay, now at home, when you wrote an answer, what will you do next? The next thing you will do at home is, okay, that's the end, right, of your answer. Now, when you end your answer, how would you know as a student at home that my answer is good or bad? Will you have a question coming at your mind, in your mind, is my answer good or bad? Is it worthy of pass or failure? You're sitting at home, you have no access to tutor. You are doing a self-study. What will you do? Are you getting my points, everyone? So when you end your answer, is my answer good or bad? Is that the first question which will come to your mindset, everyone? Do you agree with my bullet so far? Do you agree with the flow of the bullet so far? Okay, that's good. So is my answer good and bad? Who will tell you? Look at this. You need to do a self-appraisal. You need to do a self-appraisal of your answer. How? How would you go about doing a self-appraisal of your answer, which gives you a surety? Self-appraisal of your answer. But how? That's the next question. So simple. When you sit down and do a self-appraisal of your answer, the very first thing is that read the bullets, read the bullets given in examiner marking scheme. I'll just be showing you that. If you've seen the examiner marking scheme gives you the bullets of the points that this should be identified. This should be identified in your answer. Read the bullets given in the examiner marking scheme for September 18 exams. We are taking September 18 as suppose, right? Marking scheme for September 18 exam, and reconcile how many points of examiner exactly matches with your points. I'm not saying answer, I'm saying points. Now, just let me show you one thing. Suppose you're attempting a September 18 question, right? And you look at the marking scheme of September 18 exams. You all know the answers of the examiner, right? You are very fond of reading examiner answers, right? You like examiner answers a lot. Am I right? The most favorite information the student likes published by ACCA is the answers, right? So you know the answers, right? So normally on the last 3 pages of the answer, normally on the last 3 to 4 pages of the answer, see, this is the page number 14. No, this is the page number 13 of the answers, rather page number 12. On the page number 12 of the answers, you will find the marking scheme, right? I hope you know that. This is the marking scheme, right? On the page number, last 3 to 4 pages, you have the marking schemes. Now, when you look at the marking scheme and you're attempting a question on audit risk, right? So you're attempting a question on audit risk, September 18, and you wrote an answer. So now when you look at the marking scheme for audit risk, can you see the examiner has given you so many bullets that these are the relevant points you should have identified? But these are maximum points, right? These are maximum points. If you write all of them, then you're wasting too much time on one question. But can you see examiner has given you like 10, 12 bullets of the points which you should have identified from a case study, which are valid audit risks? Can all of you see that? Can you please respond? Can you see the bullets given by the examiner? That these are the relevant points which you should have identified? Not all of them, some of them, right? So will you reconcile yourself with these points? That read the bullets given in the examiner marking scheme for September 18 exam and reconcile how many points of the examiner exactly matches with your point. Even if 50% or more matches, that's good. But there might be a point which you wrote and examiner has not written. Don't be worried about it. I'll be showing you a solution for that as well. But try to reconcile your points with examiner points. Don't read the answer, right? Don't read the answer. I'll be telling you something very important shortly. Is the bullet number 1 of the self-appraisal clear to all of you? Reconcile your points with the points of the examiner, right? Next, self-appraisal. Read the examiner report for question number 1 on audit risk for September 18. So then read the examiner report for the question number 1, September 18, and identify the criticism. Identify the criticism highlighted by the examiner in the question number 1, highlighted by the examiner, and evaluate whether any of the criticism is in your answer, right? Is that good? So read the examiner report for question number 1 on audit risk. You know, every exam paper has an examiner report, which you don't read at all. You read answers, you don't read examiner report. And identify the criticism highlighted by the examiner, that what the student did wrong in the question number 1 on audit risk, and see whether that criticism is in your answer. Evaluate whether any of the criticism is in your answer. Will this self-appraisal help you to know whether your answer is good and bad? If your points matches with examiner points, that's good. And if the criticism raised by the examiner, none of the criticism is in your answer, or very few criticism is in your answer. So will this self-appraisal help you with learning? Will learning be the outcome of this self-appraisal? Will you learn something out of this self-appraisal? So if you do 6 papers this way, will you learn something in the next 1 week? Tell me, is that a structured approach? How many papers you have to do this way? 6. And after the end of the 6 papers over the next 6 days, will you have a lot of learning? Will you have a lot of learning which you will apply in the March 21 exams? Is that a very good approach in front of your screen? You will get this PDF file, right? You can take a printout of this and follow this. Stick to this. Every session has an examiner report, right? Every session has an examiner report. Let me show you that. See, this is the September 18 examiner report. Can you see the September 18 examiner report right here? September 18 examiner report, right? And you go down. Journal comments, leave the journal comments, right? Go to the question 1 comment. See, specific comments. Can you see the question 1 specific comments? Read them. Try to find what is the examiner telling you. Examiner gives you a constructive feedback that where the student went good and went bad. Make a habit of reading examiner reports over the answer. A lot of times students spend time reading the answer. Now the last thing, and I'm exiting from this discussion. If you have developed this approach over the next 6 days and you solve 6 questions on this approach, I hope you all like this approach, right? I hope a majority of you like this approach and you will stick to it. Okay, now listen to me. I recommended that you read the examiner marking scheme, number 1, right? And I recommended read the examiner report. Did I recommended you to read the examiner answer? Did I recommended you to read the examiner answer? No. Now listen to me. Why? Suppose I am writing an answer on a share-based payment. The share-based payment point was identified in the marking scheme, and you also wrote the point share-based payment. So when you tally your answer, you will be very satisfied. Okay, I got the share-based payment point, and the share-based payment point was given by the examiner. Good. The point versus point, reconcile. But the way you write a paragraph on share-based payment and the way the examiner write a paragraph on share-based payment will be different. And even the way I write a paragraph on share-based payment will be different. So if I sit down and write a paragraph on share-based payment, examiner sit down and write a paragraph on share-based payment, and you sit down to write a paragraph on share-based payment, will all 3 of us have different paragraphs under share-based payment? But do all 3 of us has the same point share-based payment? Good. But will all 3 of us have the same answer to share-based payment? No, but at the end of the day, the risk identified will remain the same. Suppose the examiner identified that the share-based payment expense is understated. You identified share-based payment expense is understated. I identified share-based payment expense is understated. Do all of us have the same conclusion? But the way we reach the conclusion will be different. Suppose I write 5 lines, you write 7 lines, examiner write 10 lines. Examiner writes a lot because it's a tutorial guidance. You cannot match the examiner, right? You cannot match the examiner. You please stop idealizing examiner. Please stop idealizing examiner. The best way to self-appraise yourself is the marking scheme and the examiner report. Examiner answer is not the best way to appraise yourself. So will you tally your point with examiner, or will you tally the way the examiner wrote and you wrote? Which is the better approach, to tally the answer or to tally the point? So are you getting my perspective? So please stop idealizing the examiner. Examiner answer is the perfect answer, not in exam condition, not in exam condition. It is an idealized answer. It is a tutorial guidance. Is that clear to all of you? Okay, good. So please ensure that this is the way you will be preparing yourself for audit risk. Do all of you like the way how to excel in audit risk? Clear the concepts, number one. Apply the concepts to the past paper. How many past papers? 6. Now, suppose you start with the first past paper, September 18. You will first read the case. You will annotate the issues. You will write an answer through a structured approach, and I will be giving you the structured approach today. You will then end your answer, and then at the end of the answer, you will ask yourself, is my answer good or bad? Then do a self-appraisal with the examiner marking scheme and the examiner report. And I'll do exactly the same today over the next 2 hours to guide you the application of what I wrote on the Word file. So will you follow this approach after the webinar ends today? After I demonstrate this to you now on September 18 paper and December 20 paper? Okay, that's great. So that's wonderful, right? Okay, so exam technique article part 2, please do read that. And the other articles I have recommended for the day, please ensure that you read through it. Okay, now let's get to the agenda. Okay, now the agenda is to do 2 papers. Now, what is the reason I choose these 2 papers? Let me justify that, because a lot of times the student asks me, why these questions? Okay, I've chosen September 18, question number 1, and I have chosen September December 20, question number 1 for some reason. We'll be doing practice of them in the session today, right? Why? The reason why I am doing practice of these 2 papers is that one of the question is audit risk with analytical procedures, and one of the question is audit risk without analytical procedures. And I hope you know that there are 2 types of questions which comes on ROM and audit risk, right? You must have seen ROM questions with analytical procedures. You must have seen audit risk questions with analytical procedures, and you must have seen a ROM question and an audit risk question without. So I've chosen one with, so I can demonstrate the marking scheme and how to do it. And I've chosen one without, so I can demonstrate the marking scheme and how to do it. So that is the reason. Now, September 18 question with analytical procedure is the most recent published question on with analytical procedure. You will not find another with analytical procedure question in the last 6 papers. So that is the most recent. Is that clear? So you will not find another with analytical procedure question over the 6 papers I have recommended you. So do you believe the September 18 question number 1 is the most recent paper with analytical procedure and will have the most recent marking schemes, most updated marking schemes? Definitely. September 18, right? Okay, audit risk without analytical procedure. The most recent paper was the last one, September, December 20. So I choose that. So we'll get updated marking schemes for with analytical procedures from September 18. We'll get updated marking schemes of without analytical procedures from September, December 20. And after the session ends today, you can do questions with and you can do questions without. Is that clear? What is the reason of choosing this? Okay, that's great. Okay, let's start the journey. Now, first of all, if you start from September 18, the question number 1, right, which is with analytical procedure, and I want to demonstrate the marking scheme, which is audit risk with analytical procedures. I'll spend some time on this and then I'll give you a break. And after the break, we'll start with September, December 20, and we'll spend time on September, December 20 as well, right? So we assure that before the break, we'll just need to wrap up audit risk with analytical procedure, when my focus would be to demonstrate analytical procedures, right? But the way of writing audit risk, I'll demonstrate that in the September, December 20 question. But the focus for September 18 is to demonstrate analytical procedures, how to go about it. Because a lot of times the students have misconceptions around it. Okay, let's start the journey. Okay, let's put the September 18 question in front of your screen. Okay, all of you can see the September 18 question in front of your screen. Can you reply to that? Okay, that's great. You move down and you come to the question number 1. I hope you all can see the question number 1 of the September 18 exams in front of your screen. Now, I'll spend some time on question number 1. That will reduce my time I will be spending on September, December 20. The purpose of this question is to do analytical procedure, and the purpose of the next question is to write an answer for audit risk. So both questions have different agenda. But how you read question number 1, how you go about reading question number 1, I will be spending just 5 to 6 minutes on that, and that might be helpful to a lot of students who are giving AAA for the first time and might even be repeating. Okay, now when you look at the first page is an introductory page, right? And this introductory page tells you about you are a manager every time, and it tells you the name of the audit firm in which you are a manager. And then it tells you the name of the client of which you are the auditor. So you are a manager in the audit firm Bisson, and you are responsible for the audit of Eagle Group, right? That's the name of the company, which has a financial year end of 31st of December 20x8. So that's the basic information you get from the intro page. Your firm is appointed to audit the parent company Eagle and all of its subsidiaries, with the exception of Lynx, a newly acquired subsidiary located in a foreign country, which is audited by a local firm of auditor, Vulture. So that's an important information in the intro paragraph, that we audit the entire group, but we do audit the entire group with the exception of Lynx, a newly acquired subsidiary. So are we the auditor of the newly acquired subsidiary? No, that's an exception, right? Now, if this question is on audit risk, which is, and you read later, if this question is on audit risk, is that an audit risk? Is that a detection risk? That there will be a high detection risk in Link's company, because as Bisson and Company, the Bisson and Company is not directly engaged with Link's company, right? So because Bisson and Company is not auditing Link's company, will that increase the detection risk? So if this question is on audit risk, can this information be converted to detection risk later? But please ensure that you read the opening paragraph carefully, because there might be something important in the opening paragraph. At times, the opening paragraph tells you it is a newly listed company. At times, the opening paragraph tells you this is the first year audit. So there might be some important information in the intro paragraph which you should focus on, and you should not ignore it. Now, the important thing, in the introductory page, the examiner will tell you about the exhibits. And normally, there are 4 to 5 exhibits in every paper you do. Now, listen to me very carefully. The first exhibit will always be an email from the partner which contains requirement. Is that true? The first exhibit is always an email from the partner which contains an requirements, what you need to do for 50 marks, right? That is every time. The second and third exhibit will always be same. The second exhibit every time in exam paper will be the background information of the company, every time. And the third exhibit will always be the financial statements, whether less or more. So the third exhibit will always be the financial statements, whether less or more. right? So this is the rule. Every time the first exhibit will be email of the partner, which contains requirement. Every time the second exhibit will be a background information. And every time the third exhibit will be extracts from the group financial statement or extracts from the financial statements, right? The fourth and fifth exhibit will be particular exhibits. Note that down. Note that down. There might be four, there might be five. But the four and wherever five, four and five will be specific exhibits, for which the examiner will give you a separate requirement. The background information will help you identify the risk. The extracts from the financial statement will help you identify the risk. Even perhaps the exhibit 4 and 5 can help you identify the risk. But the 4 and 5 exhibits are always made for a particular requirement in the 46 marks. Is that clear to all of you? There might be something important in the exhibit 4 and 5. There might be something specific in the exhibit 4 and 5. But the second and third exhibit will always be the same. And the first exhibit will always be the same. Has everyone noted that down carefully? So the first three exhibits in all six papers will be the same. But the last two or the last one exhibit, 4 or 5 or only 4, will be a specific exhibit focusing on a specific requirement. So this is the introductory page, right? The introductory page tells you who you are, the name of the client, and some important information about the client, like links company. And then you have the exhibits on the page number 1. I think in exam it will just take 2 minutes to read the introductory page because there is no much information. Okay, after the introductory page, you come down and you start with the exhibit 1. And in the exhibit 1, you have an email from the partner. And you start reading the email of the partner, hello. So the partner is writing an email to the manager. And in this email, the partner is saying, I require you to prepare a briefing note for my use. So you need to answer the question in the format of the briefing note. I hope you all know that. And there are 4 professional marks for the briefing notes, which I will be addressing again in this webinar. So you need to prepare the question number 1 in the format of briefing note. And that is the ideal format, right? The formats will not change like an SPL paper, right? The format remains the same in the AAA paper. That is a briefing note. Right? So you need to prepare a briefing note. And how many marks you have for briefing notes? Just you have 4 professional marks for briefing note, which I will be emphasizing. Okay, move on. Look at the first requirement, which we are focusing on. Evaluate the audit risk to be considered in planning the group audit. So examiner is saying evaluate the audit risk. So which risk we need to evaluate? Audit risk in planning the audit of the group. Full stop. After the full stop, can you see examiner asking you should utilize, you should use, should use. Should use means is it mandatory or is it optional? You should use. Is it mandatory? Is it optional? It's mandatory. Should we do it? Should we not do it? We should do it. No. Manzoor, why it's optional? You should, you should. Should means you must. It's optional. It's optional. No, it's mandatory. It's mandatory. I hope you're clear on that, Manzoor, right? Okay, so you should use analytical procedures to identify audit risk. Why you should use analytical procedures? To identify audit risk, not for uh, not for doing anything else, but to identify the audit risk, right? After the full stop, see what the examiner is telling you. You are not required. Is that danger? Is the examiner stopping us from something? You are not required. Not. Don't do it. Don't do it in the exam paper. You are not required to consider audit risk relating to disclosures, as these will be planned later. So if you identify any risk relating to disclosures, or you identify a risk that a disclosure is not made, will you get marks for it? If you focus on any risk which relates with a disclosure, like a related party disclosure, like a disclosure of a non-adjusting event, will you get any marks for that? No. Is the examiner stopping us for that? A lot of time the student don't read not. Please ensure that you read not carefully. You read not carefully. And examiner was saying you should. So one time the examiner was saying you should. The other time the examiner was saying you should not. So please read the question carefully, right? Now let me tell you how to go about it. Okay, if I can just bring the question number 1 in front of you, which we just read from the PDF file on my Word file. So this was exactly the question number 1 we were reading, right? Evaluate the audit risks in planning the audit of the group. You should use the analytical procedures and you are not required. So you are not required is a danger. Let's put that in red. That's a danger sign. We should not do it. And then you should use analytical procedure. That's very important. That's very important. We should use analytical procedures in identifying audit risk. Now, how many marks we have? We have 24 marks. And in the 24 marks, examiner is asking us to perform 2 things. The first thing the examiner is asking us to perform here is to evaluate the audit risk. And then the examiner is asking us that not just evaluating the audit risk, you should also use analytical procedures. So is that the 2 things the examiner is asking for in 24 marks? Use analytical procedures in identifying risk. So is that something extra the examiner is asking us? Use analytical procedures. So if we use it, will we get marks or will we not get marks? So one is to evaluate and one is to use. So we have 24 marks for both. Now, how would you split marks, the 24 marks, between evaluating the risk and between using the analytical procedures? Let's see the marking scheme. The marking scheme of this question is very clear. If I show you the September 18 answers, we were having a look at that even in the session today. I hope all of you can see the marking scheme of the September 18 in front of you. And here you can see the marking scheme. Can you all see the marking scheme given for audit risk here before the answer, right? I'll just copy this marking scheme from September 18 and I'll put it on my Word file so to give you a better answer of how to take marks. Now, the marking scheme is given and I'll use this marking scheme from my Word file, which I just copied here. And I'll take this marking scheme on my main file, which I'm using for you. Okay, now this is the marking scheme. And I'm taking this marking scheme from September 18 answers, right? Now let's evaluate the marking scheme. Examiner is saying, how will you get the 24 marks, right? See, up to 3 marks. Examiner is saying you have up to 3 marks. For what? Examiner is saying you have up to 3 marks for each audit risk identified and explained. So how many marks we have for each audit risk identified and explained? 3. So for each audit risk identified and explained, we have 3 marks. Okay, good. Full stop. After the full stop, the examiner says marks may be awarded for other relevant audit risk not included in the marking guide. Now, can you get some perspective here? Something I was trying to tell you a few minutes before. There might be a point which is in your answer, but the examiner has not covered the point. Will the examiner still reward you if that is relevant? Can you read this line? Marks may be awarded for other relevant risk which is not included in the marking guide. So suppose you found a risk which the examiner has not covered in the marking scheme, but that is a relevant risk. Will you be rewarded for it? So if you have a risk in your answer which is not in the examiner answer, should you be worried about it? Provided you have a relevant point. Provided you have a relevant point. So will the examiner give you credit? Will the examiner give you appreciation if that is well explained, if that is relevant to the case study? But how many marks will we get for each risk? Up to 3 marks for each audit risk identified and explained. Full stop. Move next. In addition. What does in addition means? In addition means other than the 3 marks? Other than the 3 marks? In addition, is that extra? Very good. Extra. In addition. Extra. Extra. In addition. What in addition? 1 mark for relevant ratio. Okay, I'll get 1 mark for a relevant ratio. Wonderful. And I'll get half a mark for a relevant trend. I hope you know the difference between a trend and a ratio, right? A ratio is like receivable days, current ratio, gearing ratio. And a trend is increase or decrease over the last year. I hope you know the difference between finding a trend and finding a ratio. So 1 mark for a ratio and half a mark for a trend, which form part of analytical review. Not in isolation, only if it form part. Look at this word, form part. I'm underlining. If you just calculate a ratio, will you get 1 mark? No. Which form part of analytical review, which form part of identifying risk. So if you calculate a ratio, the ratio alone will not give you 1 mark till the time that ratio has been connected with identifying risk, which form part of analytical review. Is that clear, everyone? So an isolated ratio will give you marks? No. But if that ratio is converted to a risk, will you get marks? How many? 1. 1 mark for the relevant ratio. And half a mark for a relevant trend. I'll be demonstrating. To a maximum of how many marks? So how many marks can I get maximum on an analytical procedures? 5. Maximum 5. Maximum 5. Can I skip analytical procedures in this question? No, because the examiner was saying you should. There was no option. But maximum 5 marks means what? Can I do them for less than 5 marks? Can I do them for less than 5 marks? Examiner is saying maximum of 5. I can do 3. I can do 4. I can do 2. But I cannot do 0. Are you getting my point? Maximum 5 marks means I can utilize only 3 marks. Is that fine? I should not utilize all 5. One student utilize all 5, good. One student utilize 3, good. But no student should say 0. Are you getting the perspective of this word maximum? So minimum 1 to a maximum of 5. Is that clear? Minimum of 1 to a maximum of 5. But can it be 0? So let's put it this way. How many minimum marks we should have for analytical procedures? Minimum 1 to maximum 5. Is that clear? So if one student only utilize analytical procedures for 3 marks, how many marks will you take to evaluate the audit risk out of 24? You have 24 marks, right? So if you utilize 3 analytical procedures, then how many marks will you take to the audit risk? 21. But if one student utilize 5 analytical procedures, how many marks will you take to evaluate the audit risk? 19. Is everyone getting the perspective? So it's up to you whether you want to utilize all 5 marks or you want to utilize less than 5 marks, because the remainder marks will go to the audit risk. Is that clear? Okay, last point. Materiality calculations. Do we do materiality calculations when we are working on audit risk? Do we find percentage of total assets and percentage of profit before tax and percentage of revenue? Do we do that? Materiality calculations? Okay, that's good, right? Materiality calculations should be awarded. That's good. Will be awarded. Should be awarded. 1 mark each. So if I do a materiality calculation, I will get 1 mark for each calculation. But how many? Maximum 4 marks. So how many materiality calculations can I do in my audit risk answer? This is only for an audit risk answer, right? How many materiality calculations can I do for an audit risk answer? 4. If I do 5, how many marks will I get? 4. If I do 7, how many marks will I get? 4. So even if you do more, that's not a problem. But the maximum marks that will you get is 4, not 7, right? So is the marking scheme clear to everyone? Every risk is worth 3 marks. In addition, there are 5 marks for analytical review. And then the materiality calculation is 1 mark per to a maximum of 4, right? Now let me demonstrate you that quickly before we take the break for September, December 20 exams. Let's see how to go about the analytical review, how you take the 5 marks, right? Let's just do this part from this paper. And I'll do the audit risk part from the other paper. Okay. Now, when you look at 3 marks, when you look at the 3 marks for each audit risk, up to, I hope you forgot this word, up to. So the maximum marks you can take for a risk is 3. They can be less than 3 even, because the examiner is saying up to. Examiner is not saying definite 3. Examiner is saying up to 3, up to 3. But how will you go up to 3? 3 marks for each audit risk. How to gain it? This is where you have to come across a structured approach. A structured approach. If you want to gain 3 marks on an audit risk, what is the structured approach for that? How would you get to 3 marks? This is the structured approach, which is given in the examiner technique article. Did I mention the page number 5 of the exam technique article part 2, where the examiner has given the structured approach 1, 2, 3, 4? Can you see that in front of your screen? 1, 2, 3, 4. This is the structured approach for taking 3 marks. Let's guide you on that. I've just copied the structured approach on my Word file, which I will be telling you. This is the structured approach which the examiner wants you to follow if you want to take maximum 3 marks. So this is the structured approach, right? I'm copying it here. The structured approach to writing a ROM answer for taking a 3 marks. ROM, right? ROM is part of audit risk, and ROM is also part of the ROM question, right? So when you're writing a ROM, how will you take 3 marks? When describing a ROM, an effective approach is to use the following. Who is telling this effective approach, me or the examiner? When describing a ROM, an effective approach is to use the following. Examiner, right? So trust your examiner. Number 1, examiner is saying calculate and conclude on materiality. So the very first thing you need to do is calculate and conclude on materiality. But how many calculate and conclude on materialities you can do? Maximum 4, right? Examiner is saying materiality marks may be capped in an exam question. So what is the capping of the materiality marks? 4. So calculate and conclude on materiality. How many marks will we get for calculating and concluding on materiality? 1 mark per materiality out of the 3. So out of the 3 marks, 1 mark is for the materiality. Agree, disagree? Out of the 3 marks, 1 mark is for the materiality. True, false? Good. Next, briefly describe the relevant financial reporting requirement. Briefly describe the relevant financial reporting requirement. Can you see this word briefly describe? I underlined it. I made it bold. I made it yellow. Briefly describe, not describing it, not explaining it, briefly describing it. Can you look at this word brief? Brief means concise. A lot of times students stretch accounting treatments. I'll be demonstrating how to control yourself on accounting treatments. Briefly describe the accounting treatments. Look at this. No credit is awarded for the name and the number of the accounting standards. And you say, no, we have to write it. Examiner is saying no credit is awarded for the name and the number of the accounting treatment. So will you write the name of the standard? Will you write the number of the standard? No, wasting your time. So briefly describe the accounting treatment after you calculate the materiality. How many marks will you get for it? 1 mark per 1 mark for briefly describing the accounting treatment. So 1 mark is for the materiality out of the 3 marks. 1 mark is for the accounting treatment out of the 3 marks. How many marks are we left with? Another 1 mark, right? Up to 3 marks. So materiality, describing the treatment, relate the risk in the scenario, do the accounting treatment. What is the risk in the accounting treatment? There might be a risk, right? There might be a risk in the accounting treatment. How many risks can be there in the accounting treatment? There might be a risk of a wrong recognition, agree? There might be a risk of a wrong classification, agree? There might be a risk of a wrong disclosure. There might be a risk of a wrong presentation. There might be a risk of a wrong valuation. You all know the accounting standards, right? Valuation, recognition, classifications, presentations, disclosures. Relate the risk. What's the risk? So there might be a risk in the accounting treatment, right? So if you're working on a related party, what is the risk in a related party accounting treatment? Disclosure. If you're working on a research and development cost, What is the risk in the research and development cost? That the research cost might be wrongly recognized as an intangible asset, right? So in every accounting treatment, inventory valuation, what is the risk? Valuation. So relate the risk in the scenario to the accounting treatment. Is that clear? So should we focus on the risk? How many marks will we get for relating the risk? 0.5. 0.5 marks if you relate the risk to a scenario to an accounting treatment. I'll demonstrate that. Wait for it. And the last, illustrate impact of the risk on the financial statement. What is the impact of the risk on the financial statement? Impact. You know the impact of the risk, right? Understatement, overstatement, right? Or sometimes it's difficult to identify the impact. So we say financial statements could be materially misstated. But if we can identify the impact, we say under and overstatement, right? So illustrate the impact on the financial statement. A risk without impact is useless. A risk without impact is useless. And how many marks will we get for the impact? 0.5 marks. So now can you find a 3 marks equation? How will you take a 3 marks? One for materiality, one for the treatment, half a mark for a risk, and half a mark for impact. So that makes a 3 marks equation. Is that clear to everyone? Now tell me, let's see who is clever among all of you. How many 3 marks risk can we write? Look at the first point, calculate the materiality, and tell me how many 3 marks risk maximum we can write in exam paper. Those of you who are giving 4 as the answer is right. 4. How many marks we have for materiality? Maximum 4. So do you believe that if I write one risk which has materiality, which has an accounting treatment, which has a risk and impact, I'll get 3 marks, right? I'll write another risk with materiality, treatment, risk and impact, I get another 3 marks. I write another risk with materiality, treatment, risk and impact, I get another 3 marks. I write another risk with materiality, treatment, risk and impact, I get another 3 marks, total 12 marks. I write the 5th risk with materiality. Will I get marks for materiality? No. So will that risk automatically fetch me 3 marks, or will that risk fetch me 2 marks? So everyone is getting how many 3 marks risk maximum we can write in exam paper if we use the structured approach in front of you. So the maximum 3 marks risk we can write, the maximum 3 marks risk you can write is 4 only. And how many marks will we get for that? 3 multiplied by 4 is equal to 12 marks. I hope you're all getting this, right? Right? So, but when the materiality marks are exhausted, how many marks will you get per risk? 2. And do we write only risk, or do we write the response to risk? We only write risk, evaluate the risk. This is not an F8 paper, Ramin. In the F8 paper, the examiner used to ask you, evaluate the risk and explain the response to risk. You have come to the AAA paper. In the AAA paper, the examiner only asks you, evaluate the risk. So we only write the risk, not response. If you see examiner answers, at times he write the response. But when you look at the examiner reports, examiner says, students should refrain from writing responses. Can you see the question? The question is saying evaluate the risk. Evaluate the risk. It's not asking you the responses, right? Okay, clear? I just want to demonstrate one quick analysis on the marking scheme, right? So that you're clear. If I need to stretch my session today, I might stretch the session up to 12 instead of 11:30 to wrap up my things. But if things gets wrapped up by 11:30, that's wonderful, right? But if things didn't get wrapped up and I need to take 15-20 minutes more, so be prepared for it, but because I want to complete this topic in a proper manner. So if you are clear with the marking scheme, and if you are clear that there will be maximum 4 risk of 3 marks. Is that clear to everyone? There will be maximum 4 risk of 3 marks is equal to 12, and other risk you write will fetch you 2 marks, right? Then You need to see how many risks will you write for 24 marks. Now suppose use analytical procedures in identifying risk and I take 5 marks here. So how many marks am I left with after utilizing analytical procedures for 5 marks? I'm left with 24 marks minus 5 is equal to 19 marks. Now in the 19 marks, how many 3 marks risk can I write? 4. So after writing the 4 marks risk, if I can find after writing the 3 marks risk, if I can find all 4 of them, how many marks will I take out of 19? 12. 12, right? So how many marks will I be remaining with? 19 minus 12, 7. So how many risk I need to write for 7 marks? Further 4. Further 4 risk I need to write. Because every risk will be worth 2 marks then, right? Let me demonstrate you this. Look at this. Look at this very carefully. I tried developing this for all of you. So this might help you. And I just want to spend 5 minutes on this because I want to take you directly to the analytical procedures, that how you write analytical procedures, and then give you a break and settle for September, December 20. Look at this. I'm just putting something in front of your screen. Suppose this is a case study, which I developed myself, right? And I just want to demonstrate the marking scheme of a 3 and a 2. 3 and a 2. Please be very focused. Those of you who are confused between how many 3 marks risk can I write to a maximum of 4, and then every risk will be worth 2 marks, not 3 marks. Just look at this screen in front of you and hold your questions for 5 minutes. You will all be clear. Look at the question in front of you. You are a manager in the audit department of XYZ company, and you have been assigned to your firm new audit client, Alpha company. You are assigned to your firm new audit client. So if you're attempting a question on audit risk, you have been assigned to your firm new audit client. Do you believe a new audit client itself is a risk? But does this risk have materiality? Does this risk has an accounting treatment? No. So the maximum marks you will get for a new audit client risk will be how much? 2. So should I put in the bracket new audit client, and I put in the bracket of the new audit client 2 marks? I hope you're getting my point, everyone. 2. Clear? Okay. The total assets of the company is 200 million and the profit of the company is 40 million. Why have we been given the total assets and the profit? To calculate the materiality, right? So it's a new audit client, will fetch 2 marks. Okay, the following information is available from the meeting with your partner. Now you had the following information. The first information you have is the newly introduced cash settled share-based payment expense. Newly introduced cash settled share-based payment scheme. No expense was recognized. No expense was recognized by the finance director, stating that only disclosure is needed. How many marks will I fetch for it? Is there any number given? Can I find materiality of the share-based payment expense? Do I know how much is the value of expense? No. Can I comment on the materiality? Can I comment on the materiality of the expense? No. But do you believe I can comment on the accounting treatment? Can I comment on the accounting treatment? Yes. Can I comment on the risk? That the risk is that the expense is not recognized. And what's the impact? The impact is that the expense is understated. So risk is expense is not recognized. And what is the impact? The impact is the expense is understated. Can you differentiate between a risk and an impact, everyone? The risk is that no expense was recognized. And the impact is. So how many marks will I get here? 2. Next, the work in progress inventory valuation. The work in progress inventory valuation at the year end is $20 million. Last year, it was $15 million. There are several orders at the year end which are incomplete. Now, can I do the materiality of $20 million? Will I get 1 mark for finding the materiality of $20 million, right? Okay, that's good. Okay, will I be able to comment on the treatment of work in progress, that how you should account for the inventory valuation, how you should take the stage of completion? Can I comment on the stage of completion of inventory valuation treatment? Okay, is there a risk that inventory valuation for work in progress is very subjective, is very estimated? Is there a risk that it is a subjective parameter? And is there an impact that the inventory valuation could be overstated? So will I be fetching like 3 marks here? And will this be my first 3 marks in the answer? In the order of the case study? First 3 marks? Okay. Next. During the year, a new system was introduced for recording sales, which was directly linked with the sales ledger. A new system was introduced. So do you believe the new system can cause troubles and the sales might be under and overstated if the new system is not working properly? Do you believe new system might cause some problems, might be some troubleshooting issues in the new systems? Right? Right? So right? Muhammad Mustafa, just ignore that. I'll be coming to the point later, right? Just let first understand the 3 and 2 marks, right? So during the year, a new system was introduced, and this new system might cause any troubles and problems, and the sales might be under and overstated. How many marks risk? Just 2. There is no materiality here. So the minimum I can score here is 2. Okay. An expenditure of $10 million was incurred on refurbishment and upgradation. So can I apply the materiality to $10 million? Can I write the accounting treatment of IS 16, the revenue expenditure and the capital expenditure? Can I identify the risk that the entire $10 million might be capitalized when the amount spent on refurbishment should be expensed out and the amount spent on the upgradation should be capitalized, right? So is there a risk of capitalizing the entire 10 million, and what's the impact? Your property, plant and equipment could be overstated. So can I find my second 3 marks risk now, everyone? Okay. Next, during the year, there was a research into the new chemical on which $5 million was spent. So again, for 5 million, can I find the materiality? 5 million was spent on the research. Can I write the accounting treatment that the research cost should be expensed out? Can there be a risk that the research cost has been capitalized and the impact that if the research cost is capitalized, then the expenses are understated and the intangible assets are overstated, right? Is that clear to everyone? Can all of you hear me? Okay, how many marks will I get? 3. So how many materiality marks have I got so far out of the 4 materiality marks I have? No, I've got how many materiality marks? I've got 3 materiality marks. Okay. Next, during the year, one of the company brand was impaired and the company recognized an impairment loss. The company recognized an impairment loss of a $10 million. So if the company recognized an impairment loss of a $10 million, can I find the materiality of the $10 million loss? Okay, can I write the treatment that the treatment that impairment should be recognized when when the carrying amount exceeds the recoverable amount? And I can write about the subjectivity involved in the recoverable amount, the risk. Risk is that there is a lot of subjectivity in the recoverable amount and the impairment loss could be understated. The management could have under-recognized the impairment loss. What if the impairment loss is more than $10 million? You have the impact. So will I get my 3 marks? Yes. So have I exhausted my marks on materiality? Have I exhausted my marks on materiality now? So have I utilized all my 4 marks on materiality? Okay, so next point. The company internal audit department has identified several discrepancies in overtime payment. How many marks will I get here? Company's internal audit department identified discrepancies in overtime payment. It's a journal risk, right? A journal risk will give me just 2 marks. And there might be that overtime payments are overstated. Overtime payments are overstated. Okay, next. During the year, a car was sold to a finance director. Is it a related party transaction? Car was sold to a finance director. And do you believe a related party transaction is material by nature? So will I comment here, it's material by nature? Will I comment on the treatment? Will I comment on the risk? Will I comment on the impact? But how many marks will I get despite the fact I'm commenting it's material by nature? Will I get 3 marks? Will I get 2 marks? Is everyone clear? Why am I getting 2 marks, not 3? Because my materiality marks are exhausted. So the first 4 materiality calculations you do in the exam paper, the first 4 materiality calculations you do in the exam paper, in whatever order, the first 4 you write, will fetch you 3 marks. But the 5th materiality you write with an accounting treatment will give you 2. So is now everyone clear how many 3 marks risk can I write in the exam paper? Is now everyone clear? Yes, you should, Nusrat, you should comment on the materiality even though your marks are exhausted. Even though your marks are exhausted, you should comment on materiality. That is very good. But don't expect marks. Don't expect marks. Is that clear, Nusrat? So how many 3 marks risk can we write? Everyone is clear on that? So the maximum 3 marks risk we can write is 4, right? And the materiality marks are always capped others in the question number 1 on audit risk and ROM. No, the first 4 materialities, whether right or whether wrong. How will you get a materiality wrong? That's such an easy calculation, Abdul Aziz. You're not doing a complex calculation which you get wrong. Okay, so back to my Word file, which I was using. Okay, I hope you are now clear. Final analysis, evaluate the audit risk. How many marks we had for evaluate the audit risk? 24. Good. So out of 24, I minus 5. Do you all know why I minus 5? Minus 5 will go where? Minus 5 will go to analytical procedure. So how many marks I left with audit risk? 19. So in 19, 3 marks risk. 3 marks risk, maximum 4 is equal to 12 marks. And then the remaining marks I have is 19 minus 12 is equal to 7. 7 divided by 2. So I need to write 4 additional audit risk. 4 additional audit risk to make up my marks. So in total, I will be writing 4 additional risk for 2 marks. And I will be writing 4 risk of 3 marks. So in total, how many risk am I writing for 19 marks? 8 risk. Is that clear? Is the marking scheme understandable to all of you? Have you absorbed the marking scheme? Now, the last thing I need to guide you is how you write an audit risk for 3 marks and 2 marks. That will be done in September, December 20 paper after the break. But this question, I will only demonstrate you how you use analytical procedures for 5 marks. So are you all prepared to take guidance on how you use analytical procedures for 5 marks? Right? And if you have any questions in the webinar which you believe has not been answered, please put that on a WhatsApp group. And I hope you're enjoying the session so far, because we have been into, like, it's been like 2 hours we are into the session. And I hope since the start to now, you have been enjoying it, and you must have liked the session as well, right? Just 10 more minutes and I'm giving you a break, right? So if anyone wants to have a dinner or wants to have a cup of tea, cup of coffee, you can do that. Just 10 more minutes, right? I hope you can wait for 10 minutes, right? Because I'll give you a break and we'll resume back for September, December 20, right? I just don't want to disconnect at this time. Use the analytical procedures. Okay. Now, when the examiner asks you use the analytical procedure, what exactly that means and how you go about you should use the analytical procedures. So when the question asks you, when there is a question by the examiner, use the analytical procedure. The focus is on use. Use the analytical procedures in identifying audit risk. That's important. That's important. So use, but for what? Use for identifying audit risk. Now we know there are 5 marks, but how would you take marks? Now, when you look at the September 18 paper, if I can just put that in front of your screen now. In the September 18 paper, in the exhibit number 3, you had a lot of financial data. See the exhibit number 3. You have the financial statements. You have the balance sheet for both years, the current year, which is projected, and the last year, which is actual. Obviously, the current year is projected because the audit, the year end is yet to close. We are planning before the year end, right? So whenever you plan before the year end, the current year is projected, right? Nothing to worry about that. Statement of financial position, and then you have the statement of profit and loss. So do you have a lot of data to find ratios? And I normally prefer that you find ratios, right? You don't find trends, because trends take a lot of time. Ratios are done quickly. So you have the P&L and you have the balance sheet. Now you can find 5 ratios, but when you find ratios of the current year and you find ratios of the prior year as well, and then you comment on that. Now just stop your questions, focus on the screen, because a lot of questions you're asking will be mitigated when you see the demonstration on the screen, right? So for 10 minutes, stop your questions, focus on the screen. Okay, so you have a data and you can calculate any ratios. You can calculate current ratio, gearing ratio, debt to equity ratio. You can calculate return on capital employed. You can calculate interest cover. You can calculate the operating profit margin. See, You have the operating profit, you can calculate the operating profit margin. You have the tax expense, you can find the effective tax rate. It's a very productive ratio in AAA paper. You can find the finance charge, you can find the interest cover. So at least 3 ratios can be found from P&L. You can find the operating profit margin. Are you getting my point? You can find the interest cover, and you can find the effective tax rate. Now, a lot of times the students ask, what are productive ratios to calculate in a AAA paper? I normally suggest them look at the examiner answers for the last 2-3 attempts. Normally, if the data is given, the most productive ratios are operating profit margin, effective tax rate, and interest cover from P&L. And if the data is given for the balance sheet, then the most productive ratio is current ratio, gearing ratio. If the data is given, you can find the receivable collection period. I think very less time I have seen past paper where receivable data was given. But inventory holding period can be found if the data is given for inventory. But from the P&L, the ideal ratios you can find is operating profit margin, interest cover, and the effective tax rate. Most of the time you have troubles in these. And then you can find the current ratio and the gearing ratios, right? So the lot of data given, and you can see which ratios examiner works on. Now, just to save my time, what I have done is that I have just taken the answers of the ratios just to show you how you go about it. So I've just taken the answers of the ratios from this September 18 paper, and I'll just tell you how to go about it. Now, in the exam, when you're answering the part A, which is on audit risk. So under the audit risk, you put the heading, results of analytical procedures, like this, results of analytical procedures this way. And under the results of analytical procedures, you put the results like this. See, now I only put the results. I didn't put the calculations. I didn't show the formula because that will take a lot of time. So just put the heading operating margin and put the answer for 2 years. Current year, last year, right? It goes same ways. So I've done the 5 ratios, right? You can recheck the answers, how the answers have been taken out. Is that clear, the table? But tell me, is this table in front of you putting the ratios of the current year and the last year will give me any marks? No writing of formula, right? No writing of formula. No writing of formulas, right? Just the way I've put the table. Save your time. Will I get any marks for this table? No, useless. Examiner was saying use. I didn't use it. I just calculated it. In the AA paper, the examiner used to ask you calculate the ratios. You were a junior. Now you are a manager. Use. See how I use it. Now I'll go one by one. I'll start with my first ratio, operating profit margin, right? Now the operating profit margin is my first ratio. And under the table, I'll start first. I'll tell examiner, see, what am I telling examiner? Now, obviously there is a very less time in the webinar, so I tried putting a lot of things on my separate file so that I can just speak with you more. See what I put under the operating profit margin. The operating profit margin has increased from 4.5 to 6.1. That's my first line, full stop. The revenue has fallen by 3.57%, whereas the operating expenses has fallen by 4.5%, whereas the other operating income has increased by 50%. Now I am telling examiner that the operating profit margin has increased, but why? Why has the operating profit margin increased? So I go back and I look at the September 18 paper. Why it has increased? Firstly, because the revenue has decreased from the last year. I found the percentage. Then the other operating income has increased from the last year. And the operating expenses has already gone down from the last year. These are the 3 reasons why there have been an increase in the operating profits. So these are the 3 reasons, right? So I found the trends in the ratio. But did I found the risk? No. I'm just telling what has gone down and what has gone up. Then I come to the full stop and I say, there is an audit risk. Look at this. There is an audit risk that the expenses are understated, with reduction in expenses being proportionately more than the reduction in revenue. So do you see that the fall in revenue and the fall in expenses, the fall in expenses are more than the fall in revenue? So could the management have done it deliberately to overstate the profit? Could the management have done deliberately to understate the expenses? Expenses are understated because the fall in expenses are more than the fall in revenue. Is everyone getting my point? So have I found the risk? Have I found the risk? Can everyone of you hear me? Can all of you hear me? Okay, that's great. So did you saw how I commented on the ratio? I just first tell the examiner it has increased, and then I tell examiner how much sales have gone down or how much expense have gone down. I was within the components, right? I was within the components, right? And then I went on saying that what is the risk? Now, the moment I tell examiner the risk is that the expense is understated, I'll get my first mark. Is that clear to everyone? My first mark, because I found my risk. I found my risk, so I'll get my first mark. Clear? But do you believe there is another risk here as well? That the other income, the operating income has increased by 50%. So is there a risk that the operating income might be overstated to show a better performance? Do you believe that? So should I write my second risk as well under this? Further, in addition, there is another risk. There is another risk that that the other income is overstated. That the other income is overstated as it has increased by 50% over the last year. Full stop. Other income is overstated. Another 1 mark. So how many marks have I got from just the operating profit margin? Because in the operating profit margin, I found two risk. Look at my language. Look at my language. In addition, extra. So have I found two risks in the operating profit margin, that the expense is understated and the other income could be overstated? It's totally up to you, Amir. You can just focus on one risk. You can focus on two risks. It's up to you. In exam pressure, you might only find one. You might not find two. But the 1 mark, how will you get 1 mark? Is everyone clear on that? Right? So is it just to calculate the ratio, or is it to show a commentary under the ratio where you need to focus on the risk? But have you seen the length of my commentary? Am I dragging it? I'm exaggerating it because I'm just writing it for 1 mark. Don't drag it. Now look at the current ratio. Now, sometime you calculate a ratio in the exam paper, but there is no risk in the ratio. The current ratio is falling. Normally, when the current ratio is rising, there is a risk, right? But the current ratio is falling. But if the current ratio is falling, there is no risk. So don't forcefully identify the risk. Normally, when the current ratio is rising, I can find the risk that the current assets might be rising or the management might be overstating the current assets. I hope you're getting my point. But if there is no risk in the current ratio, then just simply tell examiner that the current ratio has decreased slightly. The current ratio has decreased slightly over the last year, which indicates no audit risk at the moment. No audit risk at the moment. However, further investigation during audit, might help auditor identify any particular discrepancy. Full stop. See, 1 mark. A lot of time the student forcefully identify a risk in a ratio when it's not there. So if you believe there is a slight change in the ratio, like a current ratio, I'm just telling examiner that on the basis of the results, there is no risk. However, further investigations might help me out. So examiner will give you even 1 mark for that if you rule out there is no risk in it. Is that clear? Because a lot of times students forcefully identify. Right? Salman, I did mention about the break, but I was very clear that I'll give the break after I complete the analytical procedures, right? So I think you were mistaken in hearing me. because everyone is in continuation with me currently. Okay, so is that clear? So will we find the risk in every ratio? If there is no risk in a ratio, then we'll tell examiner there is no risk currently. Is that clear to all of you? But how many marks have I got out of 5? I've got 3 marks out of 5. Then you have an interest cover. Then you have an effective tax rate. Effective tax rate is very simple. You just go down and tell examiner the effective tax rate has gone down. That means the tax expense and the tax liability could be understated, right? So normally the tax is understated, right? So the effective tax rate has gone down. So if the effective tax rate has gone down, is that clear that the tax expense could be understated? Is that clear to all of you? If I can just copy that sentence I wrote prior to the webinar here, that the interest cover has increased, sorry, the effective tax rate has fallen down, which means that, see this, effective tax rate has fallen over the last year. There is a possibility that the tax expense and the tax liability is understated. I'll get 1 mark for this. 4th mark. Sometime it's just one sentence. It's just one sentence and you get marked. Is that clear to everyone? So you should identify a risk in a ratio to get marks. And if there is no risk, then tell examiner there which indicates no risk. Tell examiner that clearly indicates no risk. Don't forcefully identify. Examiner will even give you marks for that. If you look at the examiner answers, a lot of time the examiner writes there is no risk. Is that clear? How to do commentary under the table? So you need to take 5 marks. You still have a debt to equity ratio. You still have an interest cover, but please try to develop your answer yourself. I hope I've shown you the way. Is that clear to all of you? Have you got the way out? So give me quick answers and I'm giving you a break. Will the table itself give you 5 marks? Will the table putting 5 ratios with comparatives give you 5 marks? No. Do you need to find the risk in a ratio to get marks? How many risk have you found in an operating profit margin? How many risk have you found in an operating profit margin? 2. That means 2 marks. Okay. Did we found any risk in a current ratio? No. But did we told examiner that there was no risk? Will examiner reward me for that there was no risk and I found that there is no risk? Yes. Effective tax rate. Did we found a risk in the effective tax rate? Yes. I got 4 marks. So are you finding the way what does examiner means when you say results of analytical procedures, use the analytical procedures? Will you perform them better at home now? Use the analytical procedures? Do you know the marking schemes? Okay, now just one last thing before I leave you. I just want to share the comment of the examiner on the ratios from the same paper. This, if I am just putting this on the screen, between the break, please read this out, the bullet number 1 and the bullet number 2, because that will really help you understand that a lot of time the students just calculate the ratios and they do nothing. At times, the students calculates a lot of ratios, more than 30. Examiner has written here that the student calculated 30 plus ratios from the data given in the September 18 paper. For what? Useless if you're not commenting on them. So please ensure that you read this comments of the examiner I'm putting on the screen during the break, and I'll just spend a quick 5 minutes on it after the break because I need to shift focus on the September-December 20 paper, and I want to draft a paragraph for 3 marks with you. And I want to draft a paragraph for 2 marks with you so that you know how you write a 3 marks paragraph, how you write a 2 marks paragraph, and what is the way of reading the case study on audit risk to find risk. So I hope you had a productive session so far. Did you gain something in the last 2 hours? Did you found some issues addressed? So did it really help you in terms of understanding the marking schemes and utilizing the analytical procedures, how to get 3 marks and how to get 2 marks? Did you really get the approach of how to sit down at home and study? Okay, so if this has been a good session, take a break now and we'll be back in, it's like 22:40 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time. So we'll be back at 22:55. It's a 15 minutes break, so please be back at 10:55 p.m. Pakistan Standard Time, right? So be back 10:55 Pakistan Standard Time. I'm muting myself and I'll see you back at 10:55. Thank you. Okay, welcome back everyone. Just a confirmation, all of you can hear me. Is my voice getting through clear to all of you? Okay, that's great. And can you see the screen sharing in front of you, the examiner comments from the September 18 paper? Please ensure that you read these examiner comments. These are very, very important. We were just discussing prior to the break that you need to comment on the ratio. You need to identify the risk in the ratio, then to get 1 mark, not just putting lots of ratios or only ratios and expect examiner will give you 5 marks. This is not an F8 paper, a AA paper where you used to calculate the ratios. Over here, you need to calculate the ratio as well as you have to use them in identifying the relevant risk. I just want to share one comment and exiting from it. If you look at this comment in front of your screen, which I've just highlighted in green, I'm just reading it through. It says, calculating ratios and then not referring to them. Examiner says, an analytical review is not simply calculating ratios. So an analytical review is not just calculating the ratios, right? The ability to calculate ratio is examined within earlier parts of the qualification. That was the F8 paper. It is what the results shows that is applied skill in this area, and candidates who do not use the result of their calculation to draw conclusions and identify risk will not attain marks. So candidates who do not use the results, as we use the results of the operating profit margin and we draw conclusion on that the expense is understated and the other income is overstated. That is what the examiner needs. And identify risk will not be able to attain credit. So till the time you don't identify the risk, till the time you don't draw a conclusion from the result you got. So if you got a result of an effective tax rate, what is the result showing to you? Or if you got the result of an interest cover, what is the result of the interest cover showing to you? Either it is showing you a risk or it's not showing you a risk, but you have to draw a conclusion, right? So did I draw a conclusion that in the case of the current ratio, did I draw a conclusion that currently the conclusion on current ratio is there is no risk? Examiner wants to see a conclusion, right? Whether there is a risk or whether there is no risk to give you 1 mark. So is every one of you clear by the comment of the examiner from the September 18 report? So will you make a habit of reading the examiner reports side by side when you're attempting an answer? Will that really help you improve the quality of your answer? Will that really help you mitigate the misconceptions you have about analytical procedures or any other syllabus area? Is that important? But within the limitation of these webinars, I cannot read the full examiner report, but at least I can encourage you to read it, right? So is everyone clear on the marking scheme, September 18 analytical review? Have you got the track to proceed further? Because I need to move to the next question now, which is basically the September, December 20 question, the recent one. And I need to spend a good 30 to 40 minutes on that. So let's start with the recent one, the most recent exam available, September, December 20, the question number 1, which is again on the audit risk. And this was the audit risk without analytical review. So this was the audit risk without analytical review, right? Now let's see, is there any change in the marking scheme? Will it still remain the same? That is up to 3 marks for each audit risk and 4 marks for materiality, because it's without analytical review. So will there be any alteration to the marking scheme? Will it still remain the same? Let's find the conclusion to that. Okay, now when you go to the September, December 20 exams, if I can put that paper in front of your screen, okay. Now you can see the September, December 20 paper in front of your screen, everyone. Okay, that's great. And you scroll down, right? Again, you have the introductory page. You read the introductory page. You know there are a number of exhibits on the introductory page. The number of exhibits here again are 4, not 5. Again, the first exhibit always will be an email. The second will be the background information. See, that has not changed in the last 2 years. The third exhibit will always be the financial information. So I hope my wordings were true. We saw September 18, we saw September, December 20 in the 2 years. The structure remains the same. The first is the email, the second is the background information, the third is the financial information. The fourth will be a specific exhibit for which the examiner might give you a separate requirement. Now, when you read through this and you go to the next page and you go to the email of the partner, the exhibit number 1, in the email, the partner is telling you, I want you to prepare a briefing note. I'll just spend a quick time on that as well once I end the September, December 20. Using the briefing notes, uh, you have to do A, using information in all exhibits. Now see, this is important. This is important. Using information in all exhibits. Now that means examiner is telling you that the audit risk is scattered. You might find audit risk in exhibit 2, you might find it in 3, you might find it in 4. So is the examiner telling you read all the exhibits to identify the audit risk? So will it be scattered in 2, 3, 4? How many exhibits we have after the email? After the email, how many exhibits we have? 3. So do we need to read all 3 to evaluate the audit risk to be considered in planning the group audit? Yes. How many marks we have for audit risk? 26. So in 26, how many 3 marks risk can we identify in the 26 marks? 4. So that means 3 multiplied by 4 is equal to 12. So 26 minus 12 is how many marks? 14. So for 14 marks, how many further risks we need to identify? 7. So in total, how many risks are we identifying for 26 marks? 7 plus 4 is like 11 risks to make up a 26 marks answer, right? I hope you're getting what I'm trying to say you. But at times when you look at the past paper, I don't remember rightly, but I think this was the March 20 paper, when the examiner said, using the information in exhibit 2 and 3 only. So at times the examiner restrict you that only read the information in a particular exhibit and do this. So over here, the examiner is saying all exhibits and do this. At times the examiner says only just the 2 and read it. Okay. Now, just one last perspective before I started. Can you see the requirement number C and D here? The examiner is saying using the information in the exhibit 4. So the answer for C and D will only be in exhibit 4, right? It will not be anywhere else. So for a C and D, you just need to read one exhibit 4. So at times the examiner block you with an exhibit. At times the examiner says using all the exhibit. At times the examiner says using a particular exhibit. So you need to read things very well, right? That should I get the answer from all exhibits or should I get answer from a particular exhibit? Is that clear to all of you? So in the current case, we need to read it from all. Okay, now just I want to do the analysis of this question. So if I can just copy the requirement which we are looking for and the marking scheme of this question, right? For the September, December 20. And I take it to my main Word file, which I will be sharing with you. So this is the marking scheme, right? This is a question in front of you. Using the information in all exhibits, so that's important. Diversified. We need to evaluate the audit risk. Again, no response to risk, only the audit risk, because that was a question from one of the student asking, should we write a response to risk? No, you never write response to risk, only risk. Okay, can you see the note given by the examiner? You are not required. Is that not important? Again, did we saw the not in September 18 paper? And we're also looking for a not in the September, December 20 paper. You are not required to consider audit risk relating to foreign exchange transactions and balances. So will we apply the IS 21? Examiner is saying no risk from IS 21, no risk from foreign exchange transactions and balances. So if we apply IS 21, will we get 3 marks? No. Will we get 2 marks? No. We'll get nothing, because examiner is saying you are not required to consider any risk arising from foreign exchange transactions and balances. Is that clear? So will you identify IS 21? Will you apply IS 21? No, you will not get any marks. So please ensure that you read the note. A lot of times the students are in so hurry in the exam hall that they forget to read the note number. They forget to read the note and they do mistakes then. So let's start with the analysis. Marking scheme. The same marking scheme came in the September, December 20 exam. So that's an affirmative marking scheme, which you should use now. Examiner is saying in the September, December 20 examiner marking scheme, which I can just show you. This is the answers for September, December 20. And the published answers for September, December 20 contains the marking scheme. And that's exactly from where I took this green paragraph. I copied this green paragraph and I've just pasted that on my Word file right here. Okay, up to 3 marks for each audit risk. So is that same like the September 18 paper? Do you agree? Up to 3 marks. And have I demonstrated you the up to 3 marks phenomena in my prior to break session? So I will not go into it, right? unless indicated otherwise. So unless the examiner indicates otherwise. Now that will not be known to you. How would you know in the exam hall setting that unless indicated otherwise? But you should know that there are 3 marks risk and there are 2 marks risk. Do you know that? Do you know when will you get 3 marks? Do you know when will you get 2 marks, everyone? Right? Okay, that's good. Full stop. Marks may be awarded for other relevant risks not included in the marking guide. Did we got the same sentence in the last marking scheme as well? That marks may be awarded for other relevant risks? Okay, so far so good. Look at the last one. Materiality calculations will be awarded 1 mark each to a maximum 4. Is that exactly the same we got from the September 18 paper? So bullet number 1 and bullet number 3, is that exactly the replica of September 18? Everyone, is that true? Now, in the September 18 paper, there were analytical procedures, right? You have to use them. And how many marks the examiner was giving us for analytical procedure when the examiner was specifically asking for it? 5 marks. Over here, the examiner is not asking for analytical procedures, right? Evaluate the audit risk, as simple as that. Nothing else. Just evaluate the audit risk. 26 marks. But over here, see what the examiner is saying. In addition, can you see this in addition here? Just like the September 18 paper. In addition, half a mark for relevant trend. So we'll get half a mark for a relevant trend, and we'll get half a mark for a relevant trend or a calculation, not for ratio, right? Because this is not analytical review, right? Is the examiner asking for an analytical review in this question? Is the examiner asking for an analytical review in this question? No. But still the examiner is saying half a mark for a relevant trend and half a mark for a calculation. Is there a word ratio used here? Is there a word ratio used here? No. Examiner is using the word calculation, or examiner is using the word trend. See, the question number one always contains financial statement. Is that true? The question number one always contain financial statements, right? So when the examiner says utilize the analytical procedures, then you apply the analytical procedures, you calculate the ratios, and you comment on the ratios, right? Because examiner was saying 1 mark for a ratio if you identify the risk. But over here, the examiner is saying half a mark for a trend and half a mark for a calculation, which form part of the evaluation of risk. So if you find a trend, because that trend justifies the risk, you will get extra half a mark. So suppose you're taking 3 marks, but you have a relevant trend. You identify a relevant trend, and that relevant trend help you justify the risk. Will you take an extra half a mark for that trend, which forms part of the audit risk? See, you're not performing an analytical review here, right? Analytical review means you put a table, you put 5 ratios, and from each ratio you find a risk and you get 5 marks. But over here, the examiner is not asking you to do the analytical review, but because you have the financial data and you are a manager. So as a manager, can you evaluate the financial data? Can you find something increasing and decreasing in the data? And you can relate that with the risk you are writing? Just let me give you an example, right? Just let me give you an example. Half a mark for a trend or a calculation which forms part of the evaluation to a maximum of 3. So how many maximum marks you can take from these trends and calculation if they form part of your evaluation? To a maximum of 3. Let me demonstrate. Prior to the break, did I show you an example which I created on my own? Right over here. You are a manager in the audit department of XYZ company. Did you saw this prior to the break, everyone? Okay. Was there a situation here where we had work in progress? Okay, work in progress inventory is $20 million. Last year it was 15 million, and there are several orders at the year end which are incomplete. Can you look at this situation in yellow, everyone? Now see, if you write it in the exam paper, you will start to write it. You will say the work in progress inventory at the year end is $20 million, is $20 million, which is you divide the $20 million with the total assets. How much is the total assets of the company? 200 million. So you find the percentage, you find the materiality. Total assets are $200 million, right? So the work in progress at the year end is $20 million, which is 10%. Thank you. Thank you, Haji Ismail, for the answer. 10% of the total assets. Thus, material to the financial statements. Will I get 1 mark for the materiality, everyone? Will I get 1 mark for the materiality? Okay, wonderful. Full stop. See, then I write after. The work in progress should be valued taking into account the stage of completion for each order in terms of material, in terms of labor and overhead. Is that the accounting treatment, that we take into account the stage of completion of for each order in terms of labor, overhead and material? Is that the accounting treatment? Am I writing IS2? Am I writing the reference name and reference? No. Okay, work in progress should be valued taking into account the stage of completion for each order in terms of material, labor and overhead. So for accounting treatment, will I get 1 mark? Full stop. Next, the risk. The stage of completion is estimated by the management and is risky as it could involve management bias. So anything which is estimated by the management, do you believe this is risky phenomena? The stage of completion is estimated by the management and is risky and it could involve management bias. Have I found the risk? Will I get 0.5 marks for the risk? 0.5 marks for the risk. Full stop. Thus, there is a possibility, I'm not sure, there is a possibility that the work in progress inventory is overstated. Have I found the impact is overstated? Will I get 0.5 marks for that overstated? So have I got my 3 marks, everyone? Have you seen the demonstration of the 3 marks? Now, examiner is saying in addition a half a mark for a relevant trend, which forms part of the audit risk. Is that right? In addition, half a mark for a relevant trend which form part of the audit risk. Thus, there is a possibility that work in progress is overstated. Full stop. You are a clever student. How much work in progress has increased over the last year? Last year it was 15 million. Last year it was 15 million. This year the work in progress is 20 million. So how much it has increased over the last year? What is the trend? What is the trend? The trend is it has increased by 25%. Okay, after the full stop, you are a clever student, and a clever student says the work in progress has already, the work in progress inventory has already increased by, okay, what is the right answer? 25%? Others is saying 33%. I think 25 is the right answer. 33 is the right answer. 33 is the right answer. Thank you others for confirming that. Okay, the work in progress has already increased by 33% over the last year, indicates the risk of overstatement. Do you believe it has increased a lot? And do you believe inventory is overstated? Is that the default risk of inventory? Inventory is overstated. Work in progress inventory has already increased by 33% over the last year, indicates the risk of overstatement last year, which is a lot, indicates the risk of overstatement, full stop. Now, see, realistically, will the examiner give me half a mark for this? Examiner is saying half a mark for a relevant trend, which forms part of the audit risk. Work in progress has already increased by 33% over the last year. And I put a full stop here. And I don't put this line. Cross this line. The work in progress has increased by 33% over the last year. Will I get half a mark for this? Will I get half a mark for this relevant trend if I put a full stop last year full stop? No, because I'm not connecting it with risk. If you put a full stop at last year, you will not get any marks because you're not connecting the 33% with risk. But a student who after the last year write something like this, which is a lot. So is that important? If which is a lot, and the student says because it's a lot, it indicates the risk of overstatement. Will you be rewarded an extra half a mark for a relevant trend which forms part of the audit risk now? So are you understanding what is the meaning of the word half a mark for a relevant trend which forms part of the audit risk? So now how much marks am I getting on work in progress? 3 or even more than 3? I'm getting 3.5 marks. So is that a worthy audit risk in exam paper if you get a trend connected with a risk? But when you are asked to do the analytical procedures, that is September 18 paper. And I demonstrated the September 18 paper prior to the break to keep the segregation. So if the examiner asks you to do the analytical review, then you will find the 5 ratios and you will do a commentary under the 5 ratios to identify the risk. Is that clear to everyone? But in a normal question like September, December 20, if you find a relevant trend and you connect the relevant trend with the risk, will you get an extra half a mark? A lot of time you must have seen in the past papers that you can do the calculation of the interest. A lot of time you are given the principal amount of the loan and you're given when the loan was taken and you know the markup rate and you can calculate the interest cover. Sorry, you can calculate the interest cost. So if you do the calculation of the interest cost and you connect that with the risk, will you get half a mark for the calculation then? Is that possible? Right? So 3.5 marks. So examiner was saying if you write something like this, sorry, just 1 minute. Just need to make space back to where we were. Okay. So examiner was saying in addition. Can you see this word in addition? In addition means extra. In addition. In addition. Half a mark for relevant trend, which form part of the evaluation of audit risk. So did I use that 33% as part of my evaluation of work in progress risk? Do you agree with me? Yes, the trend analysis can be done in the September 18 paper as well. Half a mark for that, 1 mark for the ratio. But normally when the examiner asks for analytical review, please do ratios. Ratio saves time. Ratio save time. But in an analytical review, ratios are more productive. You do 5 ratios and you comment on them. But in a normal question which does not ask for analytical review, you can do half a mark for a relevant trend or a calculation, but please ensure which forms part of the evaluation of the audit risk. Is everyone clear with how I demonstrated the work in progress? Okay, let's go into the September 18 paper. Okay, final September, December 20, and I just want to do some of the drafting quickly with you. September, December 20, question number 1, we have in total part A, and for part A, we have 26 marks. Now in 26 marks, ideally, there might be a risk where we can have a trend, there might be a risk where we have a calculation, and instead of taking 3 marks, we take 3.5 marks, right? So ideally, ignoring that, we can have 4 marks for materiality. So multiply by 3 marks risk is equal to 12 marks. And we have remaining 26 marks minus, ideally 26 marks minus 12. We are remaining with 14 marks, and the 14 marks divided by 2, we need to write 7 more risk. I hope you are clear with this bullets, all of you. Is everyone clear? This is what we just discussed, right? So this is how we should go down with it. Okay, now see how to attempt it. Now, when you start the question paper, which is the September, December 20 paper, I want to give you a clue here, which can be beneficial to all of you. Now, when you have a question like September, December 20, where you need to identify the audit risk for 26 marks, and you go down and you start reading the exhibit number 2. Now, in the exhibit number 2, you have loads and loads of information about the company's background, and the examiner is giving you something about the company's background, right? And in the case of the company's background, if I can just show you something which we missed out right over here in the partner email. In the partner email, the partner is saying hello, and then he says, our new client. So is it our new client is a risk for 2 marks first? And in the exam, you do the annotation 2M, 2 marks, new client. Very good. So we're getting 2 marks, new client. Okay. Now, another problem with students is, right, which is a big problem with students. You go to the last page and it will tell you that it is and is a listed entity. So you are doing audit of the Crux group, and the Crux group is a listed entity. The Crux group is a listed entity, right? Now, the moment you see Crux is a listed entity, you will say, oh, it's a listed entity. There is a risk of a management bias, and the management will manipulate the results to show a better performance, and I get 2 marks. No. A lot of time, the student react on a listed company. I hope you also do, right? Is it a listed company? And do a lot of times student connects a listed entity with risk? Do a lot of times student connect listed company with the risk of management bias, right? But see, it is you need to find a difference between a listed company and a newly listed company. When you speak of a listed company and when you speak of a newly listed company, there are big differences. I want to show you an examiner criticism right of the same exam paper you are on, because that will be a mind opener for all of you. Can you see the new examiner report in a different format, September, December 20, examiner report, a very healthy examiner report for 20 pages. This is the new format of the examiner report. See, they've given a content page now. Can you see the question number 1, requirement date, 26 marks here? Given by the examiner, question number 1. So I just clicked on the question number 1 on the content page. Sorry, just 1 minute. I just clicked on the question number 1 on the requirement page. It is hyperlinked. So I clicked and I reached the question number 1. Now in the question number 1 for 26 marks, the examiner is giving a productive examiner report telling what the student did right and what the student did wrong. Please read it. But I want to show you a specific comment of the examiner from the same exam paper. See this. Examiner is saying Crux Group is a listed entity, right? You all found that Crux is a listed company, is a listed entity. Did you found that when you were reading the question with me? Now I'm giving you 1 minute. Can you read this paragraph from Crux Group is a listed entity up to disclosures? Can you see I've highlighted the starting line in green and the ending line in green? Can you just read it in 2 minutes and tell me, did you understand something? Just be quick. Is it clear in front of your screen? Can you read it, everyone? Okay, just can you read this, what the examiner is criticizing in a listed company scenario for students? Self-appraisal, read it quickly. 1 more minute. So is the examiner happy with students writing answers on listed company? Is he criticizing and criticizing badly with student writing answers on listed companies? Have you got the point? Examiner is saying just looking at it as a listed company and just looking at being a listed company, there is a risk of management bias. Examiner is not liking that. After the full stop, the examiner is saying the exam is focused on application of knowledge rather than isolated facts. Similarly, candidates will not be awarded credit for simply stating that a listed company must disclose segmental information and earning per share information, full stop. It is reasonable presumption that unless the entity is newly listed, they will be capable of knowing disclosures is required. And if they fail to make those disclosures in prior year, this would have been flagged in the scenario. Do you believe if it is a newly listed company, they might do mistakes with segmental reporting, they might do mistakes with earning per share. But if it is a listed company for last many years, will they do mistakes in segmental informations? Will they do mistakes in earning management? So do you understand the difference between examiner saying it's a newly listed company and an examiner saying it's a listed company? So examiner is saying, even if I say it's a newly listed company, then you can say there might be a risk in segmental information and there might be a risk in the earning per share because it's a newly listed company and the company will be applying the segmental information and earning per share for the first time. So are you getting the point, everyone? So will you just react to a listed company? Will you just link listed company with the risk of management bias and say, oh, I'm happy I'm getting 2 marks? Are you happy with the criticism of the examiner? Have you understood the criticism of the examiner? Because the difficult thing is that the student even read the criticism of the examiner and then still don't understand what the examiner is trying to say. Have you got it, everyone? So don't react on a listed company in exam paper, right? Unless and until there is something particular in the case study to react to. Okay, so back to the case study. Okay, so listed entity, ignore it. It's been a listed entity for last many years, so no issues, right? Okay, and you come back to where we were. It's a new audit client, right? 2 marks for new audit client. A lot of time, the student thinks that a new audit client will give them 4 marks. No, the new audit client will just give you 2 marks. How many risks are there in a new audit client when you're working on an audit risk? One risk is that you have less knowledge of business, which increases the detection risk. And there is an additional risk in opening balances because you were not the auditor last year. So you have to be very watchful of any risk in the opening balances. So you will get just 2 marks for that, right? You will not get 4 marks for that. So in a new client, there is a detection risk as well as a risk in the opening balances. You write one paragraph for that and you fetch 2 marks. I'll just be drafting that quickly. And you go down. Next page. And on the next page, you have been given the background information. Now, just be quick. The group operates cruises under 3 brands. There is such a big problem with students that they look at 3 brands that will not read the next line. It'll say, oh, 3 brands, ICE 38. The brand should be recognized as an intangible asset and the brand should be amortized over the useful life. The brands which have a finite life should be amortized and the brands which don't have an infinite life should be reviewed for impairment. And they're so happy we applied ICE 38. There are 3 brands. Examiner has given ICE 38, not recognizing that on the next line, they've done the biggest disaster when the examiner says the brands are internally generated. Will you get marks for whatever you wrote in the first line? I don't understand why you just pick up the words and run to conclusions. How many of you do this? 3 brands, ICE 38. Start applying ICE 38. Start writing everything you know about ICE 38. And after writing half a page, you come to the next line and you say, oh, the brands are internally generated. I will get nothing. Big cross on your answer. Please have common sense. I don't know what happens to you in exam hall. So are these brands to be recognized as intangible assets? Are these brands to be amortized? Getting my point, everyone? I hope that's a nightmare for all of you and that's an eye-opener for all of you. How you react to things in exam paper. How many of you do this? You look at the word, oh, brand, and you start writing. Not even reading after. Will you read after about whether the brand is internally generated or it's an acquired brand, it's a purchased brand? And examiner is saying they are not recognized. They're not recognized as an intangible asset. And a sleepy student in the exam hall will say, oh, they're not recognized. They should be recognized as intangible assets. So our internal, is the management done the right treatment? The brands are internally generated, so they're not recognized as intangible asset. Is that the right treatment, everyone? So a lot of time the student will convert the right treatment to wrong treatment. Please don't do that. Next, information about the 3 brands operated by the group is as follows. How many brands they have? They have a Sunseeker cruise. So they're running the cruise ships. They have a Sunseeker cruise. They have the Explorer cruise and they have a Pioneer cruise. So they have 3 brands. Development during the year. Just let's do one of them, right? Sunseeker cruise. In the financial year, the group will spend in the financial year, right, of which we are the auditor, which means the current financial year, right, will spend $75 million on the upgradation and maintenance of the Sunseeker cruise ship. So how much amount they will spend this year, of which we will be doing the audit? $75 million, right, on the upgradation and maintenance of the Sunseeker cruise. Can we find the materiality of $75 million? Can we get marks for materiality here? M, right? Upgradation and maintenance. Can we capitalize the amount spent on maintenance? Or should we only capitalize the amount spent on upgradation? Do you believe upgradation is a capital expenditure and maintenance is a revenue expenditure? What if the management capitalize the entire $75 million? Will that result in an overstatement of the property, plant, and equipment? An understatement of expenses? So can we find the materiality? See, the examiner has very clearly written over here, this expenditure regularly incur expenditure on their maintenance. So can we recognize the maintenance expenditure as capitalized? No. And as part of the refurbishment, ships will be enhanced by installation of the new entertainment facilities. So anything which enhance, should that be capitalized? Right? So can we find the materiality here? Can we comment on it? right? Just be quick. Where are the total assets of the company? I think it is in the financial information. Okay, in the financial information, what's the total assets of the company? 1800. Okay, divide 75 by 1800. What's the materiality? Divide 75 with 1800. Tell me the materiality, everyone, quickly. 75 divided by 1800, the total assets, 4.17%. Is that material? Yes, it's material, right? So should we start to comment on it? The point number one, see how you write it. Now, if you're writing the first point in exam, probably you're writing under the audit risk. So under the audit risk, when you're starting to write your answer, you will say audit risk, and your first audit risk in order will be the new audit client, new audit client. And after the new audit client, your next audit risk will be from the paper. So what heading will you give it? What heading should we give it? Should we give it a heading, particular heading which the examiner has used in the question paper? What is that? Sunseeker Cruises is the main heading, but they've spent $75 million on upgradation and maintenance cost, right? So we can give the heading upgradation and maintenance cost. Okay, upgradation and maintenance cost. Okay, should we write under this now? Just be quick, right? I'll be asking some questions to you. Please respond me so we complete this as quickly as possible. Okay, now quickly, the amount to be spent this year on upgradation and maintenance of the cruises is $75 million, which is 4.17%, right? 4.17% of the total assets, thus material to the financial statements, right? Thus material to financial statements. Will I get 1 mark here? Yes, full stop, and I get 1 mark, right? Now, you cannot drag the sentence of materiality, right? I think the maximum you can write on materiality is this much. So I don't think that in the exam you drag. Full stop. Then comes the accounting treatment where student drag. As per I-16, no. As per I-16, the title of I-16, no. Directly. Full stop, you start writing. The expenditure should be bifurcated between the capital and revenue expenditure. Any question unaddressed during the webinar, please put that on the WhatsApp group so you get a response. The expenditure should be bifurcated between the capital and the revenue expenditure as the total expenditure includes maintenance and upgradation cost, right? So because the total expenditure includes both the maintenance and the upgrading cost. So the expenditure should be bifurcated. Is that the accounting treatment? The expenditure should be bifurcated between the capital and the revenue expenditure as the total expenditure includes maintenance and the upgradation cost, where maintenance cost can't be capitalized, rather expensed out. Is that the accounting treatment? Now I'll get 1 mark for it, right? So I was very brief on my accounting treatment in the context. Full stop, and I'll say the risk. The risk is that the entire amount is capitalized. Is that the risk? The entire amount is capitalized? And the entire amount is capitalized, 0.5 marks, risk, comma. The risk is that the entire amount is capitalized, which could be capitalized. We're not sure, right? The entire amount could be capitalized, which could possibly overstate the property, plant, and equipment and understate expenses. Full stop. 0.5 marks for the impact. Understate and overstate. Possibly overstate and understate. Now, see, is this 3 marks? How much I wrote? 1 sentence, 2 sentence, 3 sentence. Can you see my full stops? Can you see my full stops? One full stop. Can you see my second full stop? Second. Can you see my third full stop? Here. So did I wrote under 3 full stops? Everyone? How many marks I got? Is equal to 3 marks. Did I drag my answer? I don't know what happens to you in exam paper when you drag, you don't drag the first sentence. You don't drag the, probably even don't write the last sentence. The dragging point is this. This is your dragging point. Agree, disagree. This is your dragging point. Did I wrote, did my sentence, on accounting treatment is ambiguous? Is it not making sense? Have I wrote a sentence which does not tells you what is the right and wrong treatment? I don't know why you drag it. I think your dragging point is this. Do you agree this dragging point is a yellow element which you perhaps write more than this? 3 marks, right? So that's how you go down with it. So is that clear to everyone? Now, when you're reading a question like such in exam, right? This paragraph converted to risk. Okay, gone. No more. Next paragraph, explorer ships. We have a problem with explorer ships, right? Let's see what's the problem with explorer ships. The explorer cruise ships, while still luxurious, are the oldest ships in fleet, and the group is gradually replacing these with new ships. So they are oldest ships in the fleet, and the group is gradually replacing them. So do you believe because they're the oldest and the group is replacing them, is there a need to do the impairment testing of the ships to see whether the carrying amount has exceeded the recoverable amount for the oldest ships in fleet till the time they're replaced? They might take some years to replace, but should we perform an impairment review to ensure they are recorded at the appropriate value? So can we find a risk from the oldest ships in fleet gradually replacing with new? Is that an indicator of impairment? Should we find their recoverable amount? Should we review that whether they have been impaired? But is there a value? The value coming after is for the new ships coming in. But do we have a value of the oldest ships given here? No. So can we find the materiality here? We cannot find the materiality, right? Because the oldest ships values are not given. But can we comment on the accounting treatment and the risk and the impact? Right? So can we fetch 2 marks here, everyone? Okay, good. During this financial year, 2 new ships with a cost of $110 million will come into use. So you will get 2 new ships into order. $110 million will come into use. The ships took 3 years to build and were constructed by Wheeler Shipbuilder, a company which is not owned by the group. Wheeler Shipbuilder. However, the chairman of the group, Max, is also the chairman of Wheeler Shipbuilder, and his son is the company's chief executive officer. Is the chairman of the group, Max, is also the chairman of Wheeler Shipbuilder? Is that a related party transaction? Is that another risk? Can we find the materiality of a related party transaction? Is it material by nature? So when you comment on the materiality here of the related party transaction, will you get 3 marks here? Will you get 3 marks here? 3 marks, right? Good. No, we don't find it on $110 million. We find it material by nature. Every time you comment on a related party transaction, it's not by amount, it's by nature. So don't use the $110 million, right? So do we have a 2 marks risk? Oldest ships in fleet, everyone agrees to that? Oldest ships in fleet, 2 marks. Then we have the chairman of the group, 3 marks, 5. Okay, the last line. The purchase of the ship was financed through a $110 million loan with a fixed interest rate of 6% per annum. So we need to give a disclosure of these loans, and the loan you took $110 million with a fixed interest rate of 6%. A further 3 ships are currently under construction. 2 ships have been done. A further 3 ships are currently under construction, right? They're currently under construction. And how much loan have you taken out for them? 180 million with 6.5% fixed interest rate. Do you believe the ships are under construction and the average ship took 3 years to build? The ship takes 3 years to build and 3 of them are under construction. So is this a qualifying asset? Is this a qualifying asset which takes a substantial long period of time to get developed? So the ships under construction, are they qualifying assets? Are they qualifying assets under ICE 23? So the 180 million 6.5% interest rate, should we capitalize the borrowing cost rather than we expense the borrowing cost? We take the borrowing cost as a finance cost. Will that be wrong? Should we capitalize the borrowing cost? If the borrowing cost is not capitalized, will that understate the property, plant, and equipment? If the borrowing cost is not capitalized, will that overstate the finance cost? Will that overstate the finance cost? So if the management don't capitalize the borrowing cost, what will happen? Will that understate the property, plant, and equipment? Will that overstate the finance cost? So do you believe the ships will take 3 years to build? They are under construction. So do they meet the definition of a qualifying asset? And how much amount will be spent on the ships? $180 million. So can you find the materiality here with $180 million for the 3 ships under construction? Everyone? Can you find the materiality with $180 million? Can you relate it with IS 23? So how many risks can we find in this paragraph of Explorer Cruises? Impairment, related party transactions, and IS 23. So was that a productive paragraph? I think 180 million can be used for materiality. So there is a 3-mark risk. Then there is a related party transaction, 3-mark risk. And then there is an impairment, which is a 2-mark risk. So do you believe the Explorer Cruises is an important paragraph, which you can convert after the session ends today? Explorer Cruises. Just let me give you a highlight point here. The Explorer Cruises. What was the main point? The first main point in Explorer Cruises was the old fleet. So the old fleet, we thought there is a need for an impairment, right? No value, so we can get 2 marks by just emphasizing on impairment and the risk associated with it. Then we got another point, the chairman, the common chairman, the chairman being common between both the companies. So that was a related party, and related party will become material by nature. So material by nature, you will get straight away 3 marks. So you will comment on the materiality nature. You will get 3 marks here straight away. And then there was another risk, 3 ships under construction, 3 ships under construction. So the 3 ships are under construction means this was a qualifying asset. The reason it was a qualifying asset because it takes 3 years to build. So that's a substantial long period of time. So the $180 million loan, the interest on this loan should be capitalized, rather treated as finance cost. Is that clear? So there might be risk. So we have a $180 million. We can find the materiality and we can apply the IS 23. So that will be another 3 marks risk. So is that 3 important risks coming under Explorer Cruises 3 and 3, 6 into 8 marks? We already got 3 marks from upgradation and maintenance, 11 marks. You will write the new audit client and you will take 2 marks from new audit clients. So 11 and 2 is like 13 marks out of 26. So just in like the initial part of the case, we got 50% marks. And you still have a big case coming after. Is that clear to all of you? Will you take the track? Will you take the track of going through things? If you know the marking schemes, you can spend very less time accumulating your marks. I hope you're clear on that, everyone. Please read the examiner answers, read the examiner reports. If you stuck somewhere, go and see how the examiner wrote it, not for the length of the answer, not for the inspiration, just to see how the examiner developed the point. And you might write less than that. If you're stuck somewhere, you don't know how to write a new audit client, go and see how the examiner wrote a new audit client, but don't write that much. Concise it, cut short it into like 2 to 3 sentences. Is that clear to all of you? So you have plenty to read in this question. And just one last hint I want to give before I exit from my first day. when you read a question like such, every paragraph is a flagged issue. Every paragraph will give you at least one. Sun Seeker, we got one. Explorer, we got so many. Then you get to the next one in the order at home, Pioneer, and you see what's happening with Pioneer. Now, you need to understand that in the case of Pioneer, it's written over here that for the Pioneer cruises, the group acquire operating license. Now, the moment you see the word operating license, you jump into I-38. You jump into amortization. Read first. Read first. Operating license, the cost of the license is capitalized as an intangible asset. So has the company done right? The cost of the license has been capitalized. Has the company done right so far? Now, the only thing is whether they are being amortized rightly. So but you still need to read further before you conclude whether the amortization is right or wrong. There might be another problem with it. But a lot of time you jump into conclusion just by looking at a word license and you start to write everything you know about license, not even reading the case. Now, I just want to give you a ray of hope here. If you are a good student, you will know there is a point on license, but you will not develop a point on license until and unless you have read all the information given in the case, right? Because you're reading first and you're writing after. You go to the next page and you see the operating license. Is there a note number 2 given for operating license? Is there a note number 2 given for operating license? Can you see the operating license have gone down from 57 to 56? So there must be amortization, right? There must be amortization. But is it right? Is it wrong? We don't know. But when you look at the note number 2, one thing which is important, every time you look at the financial statement in exam, you have notes. And remember my wordings. Every note is an issue. Every note is an issue. Every note is an issue. So if there are 3 notes here, means 3 issues. Are you getting my point, everyone? You should be capable of finding a risk in every note number. So if you look at a past paper where examiner has given you 8 notes, 7 notes, then that means so easy. Just read the note numbers and you will find the risk. Right now, just one last thing, note number 2, operating license. If you read the note number 2 for operating license in front of your screen, it says operating licenses are required for Pioneer Cruise to visit certain destinations. Okay, that's good. Licenses are amortized. Is that right? Is that correct? Is the management doing the right treatment? Yes, over the specific period to which the license relate. So is there any problem in the license? The management is treating them as intangibles. They're recognizing them over a useful life. They're amortizing them. So far, no risk. You cannot be hypothetical. And you say, okay, then what's the risk in the note number 2? The licenses are there. They are being recorded appropriately. What will I write? How will I get marks? How will I get marks? You read further because you have to read the whole case. You come here and it says last week, Pioneer Cruises, again, Pioneer Cruises, right? Licenses. Last week, the government of several countries, which form a major part of the Pioneer Cruises, withdraw their operating licenses with immediate effects. That's the problem. Some of the countries have withdrawn licenses, which is a major business for Pioneer Cruises. The government have stated that this is likely to be temporary, so on and so forth, but they will not confirm when will the operation resume. So do you believe the suspension of licenses is an indicator of impairment? The licenses recognized an intangible asset should be tested for an impairment review. The management should determine the recoverable amount of the licenses they have. Do you believe the issue is here? The issue is not in amortization. The issue is not in intangible assets. The issue is that some of the licenses have been withdrawn. And do you believe this is an indicator of impairment? So you cannot just be in hurry. In an exam, you look at the word listed company, okay, 2 marks. 3 brands, 3 marks. License, 3 marks. And then after you come to know, oh, the licenses are rightly recognized. Oh, the brands are internally generated. So will you just pick words and run to conclusions, or will you read pages and pages and pages to see is there any further information given in the paper which can change the perspective on license? So have our license perspective changed? Tell me, have our license perspective changed from the first page from the first page here that the company acquire license. That was the first time we found the word license. Then on the second page, we got the note number 2 that the licenses are amortized. No problems. Then on the page number 3, we got the licenses are withdrawn. Then we found the problem. Oh, yes, the licenses should be tested for impairment. The intangible assets should be tested for impairment to find the recoverable amount. So have you got some clues, some tracks within the limitation of the session? I hope the 3 hours or plus 3 hours have opened your mindset of how you go down into an audit risk question, how you read through things, how you find things. At least you should be better where you were 3 hours ago. So 3 hours ago and 3 hours later, are you finding some ray of hope? Are you finding some motivation? Are you finding some inspiration? Are you finding some enthusiasm to go about things? So was it a beneficial session for all of you? But you need to understand this is free. You need to understand there's a time constraint. You need to understand that you're not incurring any cost till you're getting a benefit. If you do a cost benefit analysis, you've not incurred any cost, right? You're getting benefits. But I hope these benefits will help you find the right track, the right mechanism of how to polish yourself up on audit risk. Will you be reading examiner reports? Will you be reading the marking schemes? Will you be exploring the 6 recent papers which I guided you at the beginning of the session? So please ensure whatever was taught to you today by your tutor, you involve yourself deeply into it, right? And I'll be putting the key points, key learning points which we got today over the WhatsApp group, which I have created for this particular webinar. And if anyone have no access to WhatsApp group and are, because they're full, I will be making new WhatsApp group and giving you links of that as well. So don't be worried about it. Over the next 24 hours, all of you will be in the WhatsApp group, right? So nothing to worry about. If you missed anything, the recordings will be available in the next 24 hours. And any resources you have missed today, again, that will be available on the WhatsApp group. So please don't worry about anything. Everything will be available and will be with you in the next 24 hours, and you start to become more comfortable with things to follow. I hope you had a productive session today, and you will be joining me live tomorrow. We have a very important class tomorrow, not just ethical issues, quality control issues. I believe students are so bad on quality control issues, and I believe students are so bad on picking quality control issues, and they don't know how to write quality control issues in exam paper. You're good on ethical side, even though I'll fine tune ethical issues tomorrow. But my major emphasis of the lecture tomorrow is professional and quality control. And I'll be doing recent papers. I'll be doing September, December 20 paper, and I'll be doing this question with you tomorrow. The September, December paper, question number 2. So if you want to come with reading, come with reading. Question number 2 of the September, December 20 exam. And see, this question was on quality control and professional issues. The last attempt, 15 marks. I'll be doing the recent paper as an eye opener for all of you. Come with the reading, right? Okay, so that is it then. I'm just winding up the session. If you want to give any feedbacks, more than welcome for that. If you have any questions which was not answered, please ensure that you put it on the WhatsApp group so it could be responded in a timely manner, right? Have a nice day, all of you. Stay blessed, stay protected, and prepare yourself effectively for exams coming up. Take care. Goodbye. Allah Hafiz, all of you. Thank you very much for joining the live session. Allah Hafiz.